Chapter 1457. Today, Xia La had witnessed the huge difference between the so-called strongest and wild spiritualists. Pancat and Shan had fought with their lives and barely defeated a stillbirth monster. But Chun Zhao could easily kill hundreds and thousands of stillbirth monsters. This gap was no longer something that could be described as 10 times or even 100 times. It was no wonder that Chen Zhao was the president of the supernatural organization. Pancat and Shan were probably just beginners. After arriving at Mingyue Villa, Xiala wasn't unfamiliar with the place. After all, she'd stayed here once. "You can stay in the same room as last time. I'll go feed the fish," Chen Zhao said. Xiala knew that this was what Chen Zhao meant by feeding the fish. It should be those big sharks. Xiala saw Chen Zhao jump off the cliff. She wasn't surprised. After all, she'd seen Chen Zhao fly before. Chen Zhao flew to the surface of the sea, and his aura spread out. But what Chen Zhao didn't expect was that other than Amon, Little Nine, and the 5 tiger generals, even the dolphin family had come. It seemed like they wanted to settle down here and wouldn't leave. Chen Zhao didn't feed them the corpse of the stillbirth monster. It wasn't something they could digest. Chen Zhao didn't want such a cute dolphin to turn into something weird. They still wanted to keep their daughters company. As for the 5 tiger generals, Chen Zhao didn't care what they became. They were just here to guard the house. Amon and Little Nine could digest it directly. The dark aura of the stillbirth monster was nothing to them. Even Chen Zhao could digest it directly. But the problem was that Chen Zhao had learned about the stillbirth monster's origin from Pancat. This was disgusting. In a sense, it was like a human stillbirth. Chen Zhao couldn't stand it. He gave the dolphins some strengthening potions and intelligence potions. Amon and Little Nine needed to eat. Apart from Chen Zhao feeding them, they basically had to go to the open sea to find food. Chen Zhao knew that they'd found a trench in the open sea. There were many giant squids in the trench that was thousands of meters deep. These squids were much larger than what humans had discovered and had more attack power. Because they could only survive under high water pressure, it was difficult for humans to discover them. The ecology there was very intact, so these 2 big eaters would not destroy the ecology there. The 2 of them could eat as much as they wanted, and eat until they were full every time. It wouldn't cause any ecological imbalance there. After all, the trench was huge. No matter how much they ate, how much could they eat? Unless their appetite increased by 1,000 times, it would be impossible for them to destroy the ecological balance of a trench. Amon's body had basically reached its limit. In fact, before the tropical storm, Amon's body size had already reached its natural limit, and his subsequent growth was due to the mutation after devouring a large number of evil spirits. Little Nine was now 50 meters long, but Chen Zhao had no idea how big it could grow. The 5 tiger generals' physiques had also been increasing recently, but this region of the sea was enough to support them. Plus, Chen Zhao would feed them every now and then, so the 5 of them wouldn't cause any damage to Moon Coast's ecology. With the 5 of them guarding the coastline, as long as they didn't encounter a fishing boat or the 2-headed shark from before, they could basically settle everything. Of course, they're not invincible. After all, there are creatures called killer whales in this world. But if they encounter a killer whale, they just have to run toward the shallow water, and the killer whale would not dare to come over. Most of the time, whales rarely go near shallow water because they will be stranded. Because of their body structure, once they get too close to shallow water, they will lose their mobility and be pushed to the beach by the tide. In the end, they will die of dehydration. Once the water depth is less than 10 meters, they will leave the area on their own. Sharks, on the other hand, don't have this restriction. They are stranded in a very shallow water depth. They can also move freely in a depth of 2 or 3 meters. Of course, with Little Nine and Amon's scent, no large creatures dare to approach here. Even killer whales are no exception. Many marine creatures can distinguish the number of creatures in an area or how big the area is through scent. If killer whales can do it, so can sharks. At least, After Chen Zhao's family moved here and solved the problem of attracting sharks, there have been no larger sharks or whales in the nearby waters. Even the more docile ones did not come. They clearly know that something exists here. So, the smarter a creature is, the more they know how to avoid danger. Dolphins are also very smart, but their personalities are actually very similar to humans. Curiosity will drive them. Even if they know there is danger, they will still approach and see. Moreover, they trust humans too easily. In the past, when the fishing industry was less developed, how did humans kill dolphins? First, they would feed the dolphins. Once was enough. The next day, the dolphins would play with fishermen. But what awaited them were fishing nets and butcher knives. Humans used their naivety and trust to hunt them. Perhaps they still thought that this was a unique way of playing games for humans until they died. Just like their trust, after they became familiar with the 5 tiger generals, they were no longer afraid. Every day, they would cause trouble and steal the 5 tiger generals' prey. When the 5 tiger generals put up a fish, they would go up and steal it. After that, they would be chased by the 5 tiger generals for a few miles. This is how they play. The big ones are like this, and so are the small ones. Actually, they have no evil intentions. They just like to play. However, their games are like pranks to Qin Zhao. They never get tired of this game where they want to bite me, but can't catch me. There were even worse cases. For example, when the 5 tiger generals were eating, they would directly defecate on them. Anyone would be angry if they did that. Of course, this evil family wouldn't dare to do anything bad to Amon and Little Nine. After all, they are too scary. One is 50 meters long, and the other is 100 meters long. They are both huge monsters. They can only bully the 5 tiger generals who are at the same speed as them. After feeding the dolphins, Chen Zhao jumped into the sea and swam underwater with the dolphin family and the 5 tiger generals. After swimming for a dozen miles, they entered the deep sea. The water here is already 100 meters deep. There are more species in the sea. Suddenly, Qin Zhao felt a magic wave in front of him. A spiritualist fell into the water. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. He followed the magic aura and looked forward. But no matter how he looked, he didn't find anyone. But the magic wave was still there. Chapter 1458. Wasn't he on the surface? Qin Zhao was confused. Had the spiritualist sunk into the water? But he didn't see anyone in the shallow water region. Had he sunk into the deep water region? If he had sunk into the deep water, then he should be dead. After all, regular spiritualists shouldn't be able to withstand such high water pressure. Also, judging from the waves of magic, the owner of this magic wasn't strong. He shouldn't be that strong. But the magic was still there. This meant that the owner of the magic wasn't dead yet. Chen Zhao dove into the deep water region and started searching at the bottom. After searching for a long time, he still couldn't find anyone in the water. Chen Zhao could basically confirm that the area was about 1 kilometer in diameter. As long as Qin Zhao left this range, he would feel the magical waves disappear. Chen Zhao searched back and forth in this area. He really couldn't find any ghost survivors. Chen Zhao suddenly paused and slapped his head. Wait, wasn't a human? Why did it have to be human? It could be other creatures too. Perhaps it was a magical creature. This time, Chen Zhao searched more carefully. First, it had to be big enough. It couldn't be a small fish or shrimp. Those creatures that only had instincts definitely wouldn't have magic. Don't even think about it. Even in an environment like hell, small fish and shrimp wouldn't have magic, let alone in the human world. Also, these creatures were usually bigger than normal. This was because magic could stimulate the abnormalities of creatures. For example, the mixed bloods in his family. Just then, Qin Zhao saw a fish. It was colorful and had a round mouth that could probably fit an adult's fist. It was about 80 centimeters long, but it was quite fat. However, Chen Zhao didn't know what species it was. Was it that fish? Chen Zhao suddenly sped up and swam through the water. Chen Zhao believed that no creature could be faster than him in the water. Even fish were no exception. Even the fastest sailfish in the world couldn't outrun him. Sailfish's normal speed was 110 kilometers per hour. In a short time, they could reach a maximum speed of almost 200 kilometers per hour. Chun Zhao hadn't tested his own speed, but he was definitely faster than this. Ever since he absorbed the deep sea, his speed in the sea was close to his speed on land. Instantly, Chun Zhao caught the fat fish. The fat fish struggled in Chun Zhao's hand, but it couldn't break free. However, the moment Chun Zhao grabbed the fish, he felt that it had no magic power. Clearly, the mana fluctuations were not emitted by this fish. Chun Zhao loosened his grip, and the fat fish leaped out. Chun Zhao wanted to let it go. However, it just happened to be heading straight for the 5 tiger generals and the dolphin family. Under normal circumstances, it would be very cautious. Once a shark approached, it would flee immediately. However, it had just been caught and was still panicking, so it had no idea where to run. Old Zhang opened his mouth and bit off half of the fat fish. The fat fish was not dead yet. It was still struggling to swim with only half of its body. Dolphin's family wasn't kind either. They went up and fought over the food. Chun Zhao continued to search for the source of the magic power. An area with a diameter of 1 kilometer was not a small area. At the very least, it was a very large area for a single person. In the deep sea, big fish were not rare at all. There were at least 80 big fish in the entire area. Whenever Chun Zhao saw a suspicious fish, he would go up and catch it. If he realized something was wrong, he would throw it away. However, the 5 tiger generals and the dolphin family did not reject anything. Chun Zhao let go of the front, and the back fell into their mouths. Suddenly, Chun Zhao paused. There was a huge giant clam before him. So big! Such a huge giant clam! It looked like it was almost 5 meters in diameter. The giant clam opened slightly. There was an irregular black pearl inside. Usually, pearls were round. However, the black pearl could not be described as a pearl. It could only be described as a piece. The pearl was probably as big as an adult's thigh. It looked like a kid's play with plasticine or chewed gum. Chun Zhao's heart jumped. It was definitely this thing. It was the magic it was emitting. Chun Zhao swam over slowly and reached for the pearl. However, the giant clam seemed to have sensed danger or sensed Chun Zhao. The lid closed and clamped down on Chun Zhao's arm. Damn, it reacted so fast. Chun Zhao tried to pry it open with his other hand, but he could not. Try again. He still could not. No way. He couldn't even pry it open. The strength of this giant clam was too great. Chun Zhao could not use his full power right now. Plus, he did not really want to hurt the spiritual creature, so he did not kill it directly. Chun Zhao wanted to bring the giant clam home. He wanted to make a water tank and raise it in his home. However, the giant clam's strength exceeded Chun Zhao's expectations. This made Chun Zhao give up. It was indeed very ornamental to raise it at home. The key was the danger, especially the 2 little guys at home. They did not understand danger. If they climbed into the water tank and were clamped by the giant clam, it would be very dangerous. However, he could raise it in the nearby sea. Anyway, Chun Zhao just wanted to bring this good thing to his home. He could not bear to kill it. However, the giant clam would not let go. Chun Zhao was a bit depressed. He could forcefully pry it open, but it would strain the muscles inside. The giant clam might be big, but it was actually quite fragile. Chun Zhao still wanted to open it in a gentler way. What should he do? The giant clam was strong, but it could not hurt Chun Zhao at all. However, he could not just let it bite his arm like this. Chun Zhao suddenly thought of an idea. His fingers moved on his right arm, and he gently pressed on the giant clam's tender flesh. He wanted to tickle it. As expected, the giant clam loosened its flesh, and Chun Zhao immediately retracted his arm. Good thing he let go. If he did not, he would have to use a more ruthless method. In that case, it would inevitably hurt the giant clam. Now he should bring it home. Chen Zhao pulled the giant clam up and felt its weight. It was about a dozen tons. This giant clam was probably going to be the world's #1, right? It was probably going to become a spirit soon. It was not bad to bring the world's #1 giant clam home. In the sea, Chen Zhao did not have to spend much effort to bring the giant clam home. However, he had to think about where to put it. This was because giant clams also knew how to run. If they appeared in unfamiliar waters, it was possible for them to escape. Chapter 1459. One shouldn't think that shells couldn't move. Actually, these marine mollusks were quite mobile. Some small and medium-sized mollusks could move close to 1,000 meters a day without relying on the tide. Large mollusks, such as giant clams, could easily climb 2 to 3 kilometers in a day. Chen Zhao felt that this giant clam that was about to turn into a spirit was good stuff. Since it was good and he'd found it, it was his. Chen Zhao didn't want to leave it to fate. What was his was his. Who would leave it to fate? Fei Lai was speechless. She knew that Chen Zhao had come back last night and even brought Shara back. Then, Chen Zhao went to play in the sea at night. He played for the whole night. In the morning, Shara told Fei Lai what had happened last night. Fei Lai was unperturbed. After all, she already knew about Chen Zhao's abilities. "Chin, why did you destroy the monster's body?" Fei Lai said carelessly. If he kept it intact, he could make a specimen at home as a collection. Shara broke out in a cold sweat. As expected, she didn't have anything in common with Fei Lai. If she faced an evil spirit, she would be toyed to death. Even if their family were to face the Devil Legion, they would probably end up as a collection for their family. Just then, Shara and Fei Lai saw Chen Zhao come up in the elevator. "Chen, you were in the sea last night." "I swam dozens of nautical miles and found something amazing," Chen Zhao said. "What is it?" Shara and Fei Lai were instantly interested. Fei Lai also forgot that she was going to criticize Chen Zhao. "A giant clam. A huge giant clam. I think it's the biggest giant clam in the world. There's even a pearl inside. It's this big." Chen Zhao gestured with his hands. Fei Lai and Shara both had longing expressions. They clearly wanted to see the giant clam. So, Chen Zhao's family and Shara all went out to see the giant clam that Chen Zhao had mentioned. When they reached the water where Chen Zhao had placed the giant clam, only Fei Lai and Shara went into the sea. They were all neatly dressed in diving gear. Chen Zhao stayed on the boat to take care of the two little guys. Little Jerlin also wanted to go into the water to see the giant clam. However, she was still too young. Chen Zhao definitely wouldn't agree. It wasn't deep water, but the water pressure of a dozen meters could already affect adults, let alone little Jerlin. Moreover, the position of the giant clam wasn't just a dozen meters. Seeing that Chen Zhao wouldn't let her in, Jerlin hugged her chest and puffed her cheeks, looking angry at Chen Zhao. "You can dive whenever you want when you can," Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. "Anyway, don't think about diving now." Diving was different from swimming. Swimming was good for the body, but diving was dangerous. Moreover, a child might not know how to control himself or the dangers involved in diving. Chen Zhao could control the water pressure so that Jerlin wouldn't be hurt. But what if Jerlin sneaked into the water when Chen Zhao wasn't around? Little Jerlin was already having a hard time facing the waves, let alone diving into deep water. Nowadays, diving required a diving permit. Why did one need a diving permit? This was because diving had a certain degree of danger. Without a certain amount of training, it was very easy for accidents to occur. Half an hour later, Fei Lai and Shara boarded the boat. Both of them were still gasping in amazement at the astonishingly huge giant clam they had just seen. "Mom, I want to go down too, but Dad won't let me." "Dad's a bad guy, right?" Jerlin immediately hugged Fei Lai and complained. Fei Lai giggled. "Yes, Dad's a big bad guy." "Then Mom will let me dive and play, right?" "No." Fei Lai was still smiling. "Mom, you're a bad guy too. You're all bad guys. I'm very disappointed in you guys. I want to be alone." Jerlin stood at the edge of the deck. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai's faces darkened. Shara's face was filled with astonishment. The girl was too immersed in her role. Little Jerlin looked like a girl who had been hurt badly by both her parents and her parents. Fei Lai, I think we should put more cartoons in our house, Chun Zhao said. Disney's princess cartoons are pretty good. I think so too. Fei Lai nodded. Jerlin had watched too many bullshit romantic movies. Even Chun Zhao and Fei Lai were tired of the plots, but Jerlin enjoyed them with great interest. Since you don't want me anymore, I'll leave. Jerlin wiped her dry tears and dove into the sea. Startled, Shara hurriedly ran to the railing. Chin, go down and save Jerlin. Save what? She's just looking for an excuse. Chun Zhao rolled his eyes. Very soon, Shara realized that Jerlin had popped up. She was even stepping on Guan Lao Da's back and grabbing his dorsal fin. Chun Zhao ordered Guan Lao Da to bring Jerlin to play nearby, but not to dive more than 10 meters. Jerlin was still as troublesome as ever. However, Chun Zhao couldn't lock her up like a caged bird. Shara was speechless at the parents. However, she had to admit that growing up in a family like this was indeed very safe. Even the ferocious great white shark was a pet that guarded the house in this family. As long as she was in the water, Jerlin indeed didn't have to worry about getting hurt. However, Sharia's head hurt whenever she thought about finding a place to live. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai had never chased her away or expressed that she wasn't welcome. However, she still couldn't stay here permanently. Minghua Villa was nice. The food, accommodation, and entertainment were all top-notch, but it wasn't her home after all. The next day, Shara found a place to stay. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai only asked her to stay out of politeness. Both of them didn't want anyone to disturb their lives. Of course, they welcomed occasional guests, but they weren't saints if they wanted to stay permanently. Of course, Shara still knew her manners. On the same day, Chun Zhao received a call from Seagate. It was Oliver Lurby's assistant. Seagate's design team had finished the second draft of Chun Zhao's yacht design. They needed Chun Zhao to make the final decision. The service provided by Seagate fully demonstrated what it meant to be rich. Generally, the yacht company would provide a design that would comply with whatever the customer requested. On the other hand, the service that Seagate provided to Chun Zhao was that, apart from fulfilling all of Chun Zhao's requests, they would also provide their own ideas for Chun Zhao to choose from. There were also all sorts of high-tech equipment. Basically, everything that could be put into the design had been put in. Chapter 1460. Mr. Ofer, I don't need a weapons system. Chun Zhao pointed out a part of the design. Mr. Chin, almost all the super yachts in the world are equipped with weapons systems. Of course, it's up to you whether you want to use them or not. But you should know how precious the lives of a super rich person like you and your family are. So, I think it's necessary to be prepared, Orford Robier said. I have my own plans. It's not that I'm unprepared, but I believe in protecting my family more, Chun Zhao said. So the weapons system can be removed. Of course, if you can help me get a nuclear warhead and missile launcher, I'm willing to install it. Ofer and the other designers were all speechless. 300 million was a lot, but it was only enough to buy a nuclear warhead. Of course, since Chun Zhao had made this request, they wouldn't object. The decision was in Chun Zhao's hands. Also, since Chun Zhao said he had his own plans, they couldn't say anything. Chun Zhao was rich. He definitely knew how to protect himself and his family better than these people. Rich people definitely knew how to buy safety better than them. Mr. Chin, do you need the voice control, facial recognition, and fully automatic driving system? That's good, Chun Zhao said, nodding. Mr. Chin, if you don't want the weapon system, then do you want the small research submarine? Yes. In the future, it would be much more convenient for his family to see the underwater world. Chun Zhao asked again, how deep can the submarine go? 2,000 meters at the most. Can it be customized? I want to go deeper. It's fine if it's more expensive. Ofer Lurby and the other designers felt Chen Zhao's wealth once again. No problem. In this meeting room, only Chen Zhao had the right to say no or no. We'll contact the best submarine design experts. The operation of the submarine has to be as simple as possible. Of course, designing vehicles for the rich was based on the principle of simplicity. They couldn't design a boat for the rich and make it as complicated as flying a space shuttle. Then it was the interior design. There were also professional designers who communicated with Qin Zhao. From the size of the toilet to the color of the lighting, the interior designer had communicated with Qin Zhao. There was even a young girl's bedroom. Qin Zhao saw a burly man designing it for his daughter, and the details were very detailed. Qin Zhao even wondered if the designer was a pervert. Of course, Qin Zhao was happy to accept his design and concept. The designers who could sit in this conference room were basically the best in their respective fields. After more than 3 hours of discussion, they made some slight adjustments to the original design. He could basically finalize the draft and confirm the design plan. Qin Zhao also wanted to get the yacht as soon as possible, so he had to find a lawyer and sign a contract with them. Usually, with Qin Zhao's current wealth, he should find a regular private lawyer. In fact, private lawyers were very common in America. Most people in the middle class would have a private lawyer. If there was any trouble, a private lawyer would be able to solve it. Of course, this private lawyer didn't only serve this person. Private lawyers have many such clients, and rich people basically had a team of legal consultants. Qin Zhao was considering if he should find a private lawyer too. Suddenly, he thought of Jerlin's aunt, who was also Jerlin's younger sister, Alex. Alex was a lawyer, and a very powerful one at that. After walking out of the Seagate headquarters, Qin Zhao took out his phone and called Alex. "Hey, Alex, you'll come to Jerlin's birthday, right?" "Of course I'll come," Alex answered. "Is your main business still in San Francisco?" "Why do you ask? Do you have a legal problem that you need my help with?" "No," Qin Zhao said. "I have a contract to sign, but I don't have a private lawyer yet. My fees are very high. If you can get to L.A. today, you'll receive a very generous reward." "Okay, what contract? Do you need me to draft it?" "I ordered a yacht from a company. I need you to be present to review the contract. The company will issue the contract." "Okay, I understand. Give me the company's contact number. I'll contact them first." Alex was very experienced. She didn't chat with Chen Zhao and went straight to the point. Also, the yacht specifications and price. Apart from legal support, I'll also be in charge of monitoring the company's progress. So I'll take at least 1% of the yacht's cost. 1% is impossible. It's 0. 1% at most. What? Do you think I'm a fresh graduate? I'm not a beggar or a lawyer without any experience. Alex's voice immediately went up an octave. My yacht is worth more than $300 million. 1% is enough for me to form a team of consultants. Although Chen Zhao was somewhat related to Alex, it wasn't enough for him to throw her a few $1,000,000. Chen Zhao looked for Alex mainly because of her professionalism, not because of their familial relationship. 300 million? You want to order a super yacht? You're that rich? Alex was shocked too. She thought that Chen Zhao would only order a yacht worth a few hundred or tens of millions. So 1% legal supervision fee wasn't too much. She really didn't expect that Chen Zhao would order a super yacht worth more than 300 million. Okay, I'll get to L.A. today, even if it was only 0. 1% legal supervision. It was still a lot of money for Alex. Legal supervision also included supervision of the design and construction costs. For example, the yacht company's false price was also within her scope. After the yacht company came up with the final plan, Alex still needed to consult and investigate all aspects of the design plan. Among them, there was also a flexible price. This was used to cover the changes in the price and labor costs that occurred during the construction of the yacht. She also needed to negotiate this flexible price. In the end, she would get an estimated $500,000. Of course, it was also a very generous reward for her. By the way, is it convenient for people to live in your house? Qin Zhao hesitated. Please remember this book's domain name, mobile version. Chapter 1461. No one could take Jerlin away from him, even if it was just a temporary loan. Even if the person was Jerlin's relative. If you want to visit Jerlin, you can come anytime. Qin Zhao rejected Alex's request in a roundabout way. So petty. As a lawyer, Alex could obviously tell what Qin Zhao was implying. Qin Zhao didn't want her to stay at his house, but he also didn't want Jerlin to stay with Alex for now. I've already booked the ticket. My flight is at 3 in the afternoon. Come pick me up at 5. With that, Alex hung up. Qin Zhao checked the time. It was only noon. Qin Zhao called Fei Lai. He wouldn't be going home at noon. After all, it would take almost an hour to get to Mingyue Villa from here. It would be even further from the villa to the airport. Since he had to pick Alex up later, he might as well stay in the city until it was time. Dragging time was the worst. The more you cared about time, the slower it would pass. Qin Zhao felt like an entire day had passed, but in reality, only half an hour had passed. Qin Zhao had no choice but to walk around. He remembered that Charla had told him last time that the wooden comb she'd bought that had caused trouble came from 558 Downing Street. Qin Zhao planned to go there and take a look. If the people from 558 Downing Street had sold that dirty thing to someone else, Qin Zhao had to get rid of a pest for the people. After all, Qin Zhao thought that Los Angeles was his territory, even though he never took the initiative to solve problems. But since the problem was right in front of him, Qin Zhao would take the time to solve it. This was a shop that normal people couldn't find. It was also Qin Zhao's first time here. However, he'd heard from the people in the association. Many people in the association often visited this shop. The entire Downing Street was filled with high-end luxury shops. If the decorations weren't up to standard, the city government would shut them down. But the door of 558 Downing Street was very old. It was a wooden house from the 1920s or 1930s. It was old, and the paint on the door frame had almost faded. The windows weren't modern, floor-to-ceiling windows. Instead, they were square glass windows made of wood. When Qin Zhao pushed the door open, he wasn't used to the dark environment in the shop. The items in the shop were also quite messy, and there were a lot of things. An old woman and a red-haired girl were lying on a chair behind the counter. When they saw Qin Zhao, they immediately jogged over with professional smiles. "Hello, sir. How may I help you?" Qin Zhao glanced at the red-haired girl. Her magic power was pretty good, probably about the same as Jalanash or Giselle in the association. As for the old woman, sleeping on the chair, Qin Zhao felt that she should be similar to Gaia. However, this was only in terms of magic power. If it were an actual battle, the old lady would probably be torn apart by Gaia. Qin Zhao knocked on the glass counter. Seeing that Qin Zhao had ignored her and gone to disturb her boss, the red-haired girl frowned in dissatisfaction. "Sir, if you don't have any other requests, please leave," the red-haired girl said with dissatisfaction. Just then, the old woman woke up and looked at Qin Zhao. "Sir, what can I do for you?" "A while ago, you sold a wooden comb here, right?" Qin Zhao asked. The old woman looked at the red-haired girl in confusion. Qin Zhao didn't know if the girl was pretending or if she really couldn't remember. Her eyes were blank. "I need to check. Is there a problem?" "There's a problem," Qin Zhao said. "Someone already died because of this comb." The old woman's and the red-haired girl's expressions changed slightly. Businessmen were most afraid of accidents. This was especially true for shops that sold magic items and magic raw materials. They were even more afraid of such things. "Who are you? Someone from the government? Or the victim's family?" The old woman stood up. She was already very old and her body had shrunk. She looked less than 5 meters tall. However, Her eyes were still lively. She stared at Chen Zhao with a sharp gaze. Los Angeles is my territory, Chen Zhao said. Hearing that, the red-haired girl flew into a rage. You want to slander our shop and then charge us protection fees? Clearly, she thought that Chen Zhao was someone who wanted protection fees. Chen Zhao only glanced at the red-haired girl indifferently. She was probably just an employee here. With her brain, she probably wasn't the mastermind. Chen Zhao's gaze fell on the old woman. The old woman's magic power was definitely powerful. If this old woman was the mastermind, both in terms of life experience and personal strength, Chen Zhao wouldn't doubt it. Of course, Chen Zhao wasn't here to question her. He also wanted to clarify the situation. The old woman wouldn't think that Chen Zhao was someone who wanted protection fees. Someone who could find her shop and even dare to stand in front of her and denounce her was definitely not a hooligan. Plus, she'd been in Los Angeles for so many years. It wasn't like she didn't know what was going on. She knew about the supernatural organization. Recently, they'd become even more famous. Moreover, the supernatural organization claimed that Los Angeles was their territory. Apparently, the president of the organization was a Chinese. The old woman could roughly guess Chen Zhao's identity. Sir, we're also confused about your accusations. Can you tell us the whole story? Even if you want to convict me, please show evidence. I don't have evidence, but I have witnesses, Chen Zhao said. An ordinary person once came into your shop and bought a wooden comb. Then, she caused a series of supernatural events. Because of the comb, a person died. He was a spiritualist. Impossible, the old woman shouted immediately. You're slandering me, the red-haired girl yelled agitatedly. How can an ordinary person come here? That's the truth. For an ordinary person to find this place, she can't come here unless someone brought her in or someone from your shop wanted her in. Chen Zhao said indifferently. I don't care if you believe me or not. I just need an explanation. What if we can't? The old woman asked in a low and hoarse voice. It seemed that she was also angered by Chen Zhao's barbaric attitude. If you can't, I'll tear down this shop and chase you out of Los Angeles. Although it seemed like a bully bullying the weak, this was the world. However, this was how the world worked. Moreover, this incident was caused by this shop in the first place. Chen Zhao had already confirmed that it was the truth. Shara was indeed a victim and someone had died. Therefore, no one was innocent. Please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heavens, Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1462. The old woman's face was green. Even so, she didn't want to fight Chen Zhao. No matter what, it wasn't wise to fight Chen Zhao. If she was younger, she would probably tear the man before her into pieces and stuff him into the cellar. She was older. Although she had more magic power, her energy, stamina, and consciousness weren't as high as before. On the other hand, her employee, the red-haired girl, was like an angry rooster. Red and black balls of energy appeared in her palms. Chen Zhao could feel the girl's magic power. He'd never seen it before. It shouldn't be the magic school he was familiar with. Seeing the girl's magic, the old woman immediately frowned and scolded. Wire, stop! You can't do anything here. Put away your magic. If someone had to fight, it should be her, not Wire. Since she didn't want to fight, what was the point of Wire doing it? At least for now, the old woman didn't plan on falling out with Chen Zhao and the supernatural organization behind him. Sir, what kind of explanation do you want? Why did you sell that comb and your intentions? The old woman took a deep breath and calmed herself down. Turning to Wire, she said, Wire, look at the account book. Did he sell that comb from our shop? Even now, the old woman still doubted Chen Zhao's words. Wire glared at Chen Zhao and opened the account book unhappily. When was it sold? About 2 months ago. Wire started searching. Finally, she found the sales record on the account book. Wire was an employee in the shop. Of course. She needed to record what she sold. Because the old woman didn't know how to use electronic devices, she kept records in the account book too. Wire took out another order to compare. After 10 minutes, Wire's expression froze. Noticing Wire's expression, the old woman's heart skipped a beat. Did something really go wrong? But the old woman didn't change her expression. Her gaze was indifferent. "Wire, did you find it?" the old woman asked casually, trying to stay calm. Wire nodded slightly. "That comb is a consignment. The seller is Ruan Faxben." Hearing this name, the old woman couldn't stay calm anymore. Ruan Faxi was a rather famous alchemist. But his fame didn't lie in how good he was or what kind of works he had. And because of his vile reputation, he dared to try almost any magical tool. From Asia to Africa, then to Europe, and finally to the Americas, he left behind a notorious reputation. "Didn't you check if his consignment is dangerous?" the old woman scolded. She accepted alchemists' consignments in this magic shop and took a commission from them. However, in order to ensure their business reputation, the consignment also needed to be inspected. "I checked." Wire was so anxious that her tears were about to fall. Chun Zhao's face was still cold. He didn't know if they were acting or not. Before investigating clearly, he would not make a rash decision. The old woman sighed. When she heard that it was a consignment from Ruan Fassbender, her head swelled. The name was synonymous with trouble. Now she was 80% sure that the problem lay with Ruan Faxben. Wire must have checked the consignment. But with her skills, how could she beat a sly old fox like Ruan Faxi? Ruan Faxi only needed to disguise himself a little and he would be able to fool Wire. Ignoring Ruan Faxi's alchemy skills, the two were not on the same level in terms of mentality. Ruan Faxi's personal deeds were too vile. He dared to do all kinds of forbidden experiments and tools. Who knew if this was another evil magic tool created by Ruan Faxi and used it to trick people? It's just a normal psychic tool. Wire complained softly. She still felt that Chun Zhao was stirring up trouble. "Sir, I think it's our fault." The old woman quickly recognized the situation. She didn't have the advantage in terms of strength or logic. No matter how powerful she was, how many connections she had, and how experienced she was, she couldn't compare to the local supernatural organization. So she admitted defeat and pushed the blame. "We didn't check if there's anything wrong with the consignment. We're willing to compensate the victims and pay a fine to the supernatural organization." The old woman lowered her stance. She first said that the problem was on them, but their problem was relatively minor, and they were also the victims. Moreover, they had a good attitude in admitting their mistakes. She couldn't possibly crush this old woman to death. "You can contact the victim yourself," Qin Zhao said calmly. "I'll give you the victim's contact information. As for the fine, the supernatural organization doesn't need it. Bring Ruan Faxburn to the supernatural organization's headquarters." Chen Zhao wasn't worried that the old woman didn't have money. This seemed like an old magic shop, but its sales weren't low. At least, the people of the organization spent more than $100,000 here every month. Chun Zhao estimated that this shop's monthly turnover could be more than 2 million. Even the compensation for the victims, Shara and Sean, might not be enough to make the old woman pay. The old woman frowned. Money was a small matter. Just as Chun Zhao had guessed, she had money. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was a billionaire. She could accept hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. But it would be troublesome for her to capture Ruan Faxburn. Ruan Faxi had caused trouble everywhere for many years and still hadn't been caught. One didn't even need to think to know how powerful he was. How much money would she have to spend to capture him? "Sir, there's only me and Wire in this shop. Do you think we have the ability to catch Ruan Faxaban? If you can't, you can find someone else." This shop had been open for almost 100 years. Chun Zhao believed that the old woman's connections weren't just limited to the two people in the shop. The old woman probably knew more people from the spiritual world than all the people in the supernatural organization combined. If she was willing to spend money, it was more than enough to capture an alchemist. Moreover, this matter was originally her fault, so she also had the obligation to do so. Of course, the old woman considered this problem. She was willing to pay, but she didn't want to get involved. She was doing business. How could she find someone to capture an alchemist? And it wasn't an ordinary alchemist. Just then, a middle-aged man with messy hair walked in. "Hello, Ms. Wire, Ms. Mephisto. I'm here to collect the payment." Chapter 1463. Ruan Faxben. The old woman's pupils constricted. In an instant, all three of their gazes converged on Ruan Faxben. Ruan Faxben's heart skipped a beat. Something's wrong. He could vaguely sense that something was wrong. "Sorry, I think I went to the wrong place." Ruan Faxben subconsciously wanted to turn around and leave. Just then, a hand grabbed the back of Ruan Faxben's collar. "Let go." Ruan Faxben clearly didn't like people grabbing his collar. "Wait," the old woman called out hurriedly. She didn't want people to fight in her shop. There were too many items in the shop, and it was too small. If they made a move here, it was very likely that they would damage her goods. But neither Ruan Faxben nor Qin Zhao were willing to listen to others. Ruan Faxben turned around and threw a cloud of shiny silver dust at Qin Zhao. "Damn!" the old woman yelled in panic. "Wire, dodge!" It was explosive magic phosphorus. Normal magic phosphorus didn't do much damage to the human body, but it did a lot to spirits. But this high explosive magic phosphorus required a very high level of alchemy. Through the purification of magic phosphorus, its functionality could be improved. High explosive magic phosphor was extremely destructive to people and the surrounding environment. The moment Ruan Faxi scattered the high explosive magical phosphor, it stuck to his face and body like a magnet. The old woman was startled. This was Ruan Faxi, a rarely seen alchemist. He was actually able to combine high explosive magic phosphorus with a magnetic effect to completely absorb the enemy's body, thereby causing greater damage to the enemy while reducing the damage to himself. Qin Zhao felt a burning sensation on his face, but he wasn't hurt much. Only his clothes were burned. Qin Zhao looked down at his clothes and then at Ruan Faxben. Ruan Faxben's expression changed. His opponent didn't react to explosive magic phosphorus at all. Strengthening. Ruan Faxben wanted to change tactics, but Qin Zhao's fist had already landed on his stomach. Ruan Faxben felt an intense pain as if his stomach was cramping. Then his body tilted and Qin Zhao tossed him back into the shop. He smashed many things along the way. Qin Zhao wiped off the residue on his body and stared at Ruan Faxben in annoyance. It had been a long time since anyone dared to make a move against him. Ruan Faxi held his stomach and struggled to get up. Seeing Qin Zhao approach, Ruan Faxi chanted an incantation. Light flashed in his hand and a sword appeared. "Don't come over again, Pa." Qin Zhao swung his hand and slapped Ruan in the face. Ruan Faxi was already in a daze. Just because he had a weapon in his hand didn't mean that he was strong. Criminals carry weapons because they are afraid. Qin Zhao pressed Ruan's head into a water tank. He didn't care what was in the tank. It was probably some kind of magic material. Anyway, it was emitting a trace of magic fluctuations. The old woman and Wire watched Qin Zhao torture Ruan Faxben in silence. They were in no position to intervene. Besides, who were they supposed to help? Of course, it wasn't that he didn't have a stance. For example, their fight had damaged the goods in the magic shop. However, none of this was important. A few minutes later, Qin Zhao picked up the dying Ruan Faxi and stood up. "Calculate the losses here and send the bill to the supernatural organization." "Thank you." Qin Zhao took out his phone. "Hey, West, come to 558 Downey Street. Send 2 more people. Bring someone back to HQ." Sir, can the losses here be offset by compensation? The old woman asked with a smile. No, Qin Zhao said. Compensation is for the victims. He's responsible for the losses here. But we're victims too. You're legally responsible too. Of course, you can also ask him for compensation for the losses from selling the defective goods he provided. But he's in your hands now. You can write a report on the economic losses and give it to us. We'll evaluate it according to the actual situation. Kid, do you know who I am? Ruan Faxi still wanted to struggle. Ruan Faxi, right? Since you know, do you want to die? Do you know how many spiritualists I know? Just one word from me. Chen Zhao lifted one of Ruan Faxi's fingers and pinched it gently. Chen Zhao's cruel laughter accompanied Ruan Faxi's pain screams. Everyone you know died because of your alchemy. If you lose all 10 fingers, can you still use alchemy? So sorry. I was joking. Ruan Faxi was about to cry. You're just messing with people by saying harsh words. Ruan Faxi's heart was bitter. Why don't you find out who I, Ruan Faxi, am? I do know many spiritualists, but they're not my friends. All of them want my life, as long as Ruan Faxi was on the street and shouted, Ruan Faxi! In 10 minutes, 100 spiritualists would gather to take his life. 20 minutes later, West arrived with his men. Seeing Ruan Faxi in Chen Zhao's hands, West was both surprised and delighted. Ha! Ruan Faxi! You didn't expect this, did you? You're in my hands, haha. Neither Chen Zhao nor West's companion, Harrel, expected West to act so strangely. More accurately, he lost his composure. Ruan Faxi clearly knew West too. However, Qin Zhao had already beaten him into a pig's head. It was impossible to see his expression. Chen Zhao tossed Ruan Faxi to West. Send him back to the headquarters. We'll talk when I'm free. Then before that, West clearly had other intentions. Before that, you can do whatever you want. Don't kill him. West and Ruan Faxi's expressions were completely different. One was extremely dejected, while the other was extremely excited. Chen Zhao didn't know what grudge they had. However, Chen Zhao was clearly happy to fulfill his subordinate's wish. As one of the founding members of the association, West was Chen Zhao's most trusted and reliable subordinate. Usually, West was very calm and collected. He'd never had such an exaggerated reaction. For West to be so excited, he probably had an irreconcilable feud with Ruan Faxi, who killed his father and stole his wife. By the way, let him explain what happened first. If he doesn't want to say it, our family's meat grinder should still be working. Chapter 1464. Boss, why didn't you let me teach that Asian a lesson? Wire asked angrily. However, she only dared to say this after Qin Zhao left. The old woman, Mephistos, glanced at Wire. He's an enhancer. In such a small space, he can tear you apart before you can even use your magic. Plus, he has the supernatural organization behind him. We don't need to offend an organization. What's there to be afraid of? It's like a waste camp these years. I heard that the supernatural organization expanded their recruitment. Many powerful newcomers joined, Mephistos said. For example, that Asian. Is he powerful? He's just an enhancer and he's a wizard. The information Mephistos could get was basically from customers who came to the magic shop to buy things. After all, she didn't have a family or power. She couldn't build an intelligence department. She hadn't fought anyone in decades either. The information she could get was very limited. Chen Zhao first got into West's car. He looked at his clothes. West, take off your clothes and lend them to me. I'm going to the airport later. West glanced at Helith and more. Their clothes clearly weren't suitable for Qin Zhao. After putting on West's clothes, Qin Zhao immediately felt that they were short. After all, West was old. Chen Zhao's figure was only average compared to Caucasians. However, he was much stronger than West, so Chen Zhao felt a little tense. If he used a bit of force, his clothes would burst. Forget it. I'll go buy clothes myself. Chen Zhao shook his head. You guys go back first. Thankfully, this was Downey Street. There were brands everywhere. Chen Zhao spent a few $1,000s to change his clothes. He casually threw the salesgirl's number into the trash can outside. Chen Zhao adjusted his collar. Having a suitable set of clothes was more comfortable than finding random clothes. However, as soon as he left the store, someone bumped into his shoulder. The person who bumped into Chen Zhao's shoulder was a man about his size. However, the man's hair was neither black nor white. He didn't bump into Chen Zhao on purpose. His gaze was unfocused, and he was a bit distracted. After bumping into Chen Zhao's shoulder, he apologized. Chen Zhao made eye contact with the man. Say, this man is a good person. This man has the smell of blood on him. However, from the look in his eyes, it seemed like he had been hit by something. He looked uneasy. Subconsciously, Chen Zhao touched his pocket to see if he was missing anything. Of course, this action was also seen by the man. The man was a bit angry. He glared at Chen Zhao and left. Chen Zhao felt rather awkward too. His actions were indeed rather unfriendly. Chen Zhao dawdled for another hour. Then, he slowly headed to the airport. It was only 4 in the afternoon when he arrived at the airport, although Alex's flight landed at 5 o'clock. However, Chen Zhao didn't see Alex walk out of the airport entrance until 5:30. They hadn't seen each other for nearly a year, but Alex hadn't changed much. Beautiful sister-in-law, naturally, Alex's hairstyle had changed. She kept her hair short, which made her look a bit more heroic. He was dressed in plain white, with loose trousers embroidered with a few dark vine flowers. His shirt was a pure cotton vest and a small suit jacket. His eyes were still sharp and experienced, and his expression was still proud and confident. However, every time he looked at Chen Zhao, there would be some dissatisfaction and enmity in her eyes. It was like this a year ago, and it was still like this a year later. When Alex walked out of the airport entrance, she lifted her briefcase to Chen Zhao. What? It's your honor to help a lady carry her bag, Alex said matter-of-factly. Ms. Alex, you seem to have forgotten that I'm your employer for now. Alex walked up and held Chen Zhao's wrist. She leaned her head on his shoulder and picked up her phone with her other hand. Smiling, she said, "Come smile." What? Chen Zhao subconsciously looked at the phone. Crack! Alex immediately let go of Chen Zhao. Oh, what's your girlfriend's phone number? Chen Zhao's face twitched. He snatched Alex's briefcase and looked at her in annoyance. Delete the photo. Can I keep it as a souvenir? I have a company that doesn't have a legal consultant yet, Chen Zhao said calmly. I'm planning to form a legal team soon. Alex deleted the photo without hesitation. Are you planning to hire me for a long time? My fees aren't cheap. Alex had her own law firm. Actually, other than Chen Zhao, Alex had come this time because Jerlin's birthday was coming up. That was why she'd taken the initiative to come. On the other hand, Chen Zhao's legal team was very attractive to her. There were quite a lot of lawyers in the law firm. If Chen Zhao handed the legal team to her, it would be much easier to deal with. If Chen Zhao handed the legal team to her, the law firm's business would increase greatly. The so-called legal team didn't just work for Chen Zhao's company. They could also accept business from other people or companies. However, they couldn't exist as a team. In other words, when Chen Zhao's company needed legal support, they had to be responsible for Chen Zhao's company first. Don't you want to stay in L.A.? That way you can see Jerlin more often, Chen Zhao said with a smile. So, can you lower the fees? I want to see Jerlin, but don't think about lowering the fees. You're using your daughter as a bargaining chip. Don't you feel ashamed? If you don't want Jerlin to know your shameless actions when she grows up, you better raise the fees. You're using this to threaten me, which means you're not a good person either. If you don't want Jerlin to know your true colors, I'll lower the fees by half. Alex knew that Chen Zhao was a university professor and that he was quite rich. She also knew that Chen Zhao's identity was special. He seemed to be involved in some shady business. Plus, she'd seen Chen Zhao's subordinates and even his own people. But she really didn't know that Chen Zhao had a company. He also had to form a legal team. Usually a small or medium-sized company would have a legal consultant. Only large companies could form a legal team. Otherwise, they wouldn't have enough money to support the fees of a legal team. After all, a legal team would cost at least $2 or $3 million a year. If a company's annual profit was only $10 million, only a lunatic would form a legal team. Chapter 1465. The legal team couldn't just pay the people in the team. For example, a company in New York had infringed on Chen Zhao's company. In that case, the entire legal team would be mobilized. They would have to reimburse the air tickets for a round trip, as well as their meals and lodging. Occasionally, they would have to go out and eat at public expense. If it was a team of 20 people, it might cost $4 to $5 million a year. Of course, Chen Zhao estimated that his beer brand was still a mid-tier company. A team of around 10 people would be enough. Now that the company was bigger, there were more troubles. Chen Zhao knew that the brewery had been in a lot of trouble recently. Even the government of Mountain Town was looking for trouble. Money moved people's hearts. Even Dion Sloat, who had begged Chen Zhao in the past, had changed his attitude now. The townspeople were the same. They felt that they should have a share in the brewery. Chen Zhao could only chuckle at this. Fortunately, Amira had reminded him back then and killed the potential trouble. Now, both the town government and the townspeople were making trouble, but they had no problem with Chen Zhao. Their biggest move was to stop production. They would use the fact that many of the brewery's employees were townspeople to incite them to go on strike. This could only be used once against Chen Zhao. Once they did that, Chen Zhao would fire all the townspeople, even if he had to stop production for a few days. Chen Zhao gave them a high salary. If they still didn't know what was good for them, Chen Zhao wouldn't go easy on them. Back then, Chen Zhao and Denver had been on guard against this. Now, half of the town's income came from his brewery. Aside from profits, Chen Zhao's reputation in the town was quite good. 2 days ago, Dion Sloat had called him and wanted him to be the honorary mayor of Mountain Town. Chen Zhao wouldn't be an honorary mayor unless he was crazy. Dion's intention was too obvious. He wanted to give some shares of the brewery to the town government. Although Dion Sloat's idea was to contribute to the town, however, he would be sacrificing Chen Zhao's personal interests. Once the shares were distributed, it would be even more troublesome. The town government could even use the shares to participate in the decision-making. They might even be used by their competitors. This was something Chen Zhao couldn't tolerate. Denver, the agent and collaborator, was very clear about his identity and position. This was why Chen Zhao liked to work with Denver. Perhaps he had ulterior motives, but he knew what Chen Zhao was thinking. Chen Zhao might not care about the brewery at all, but he had a firm hold on the shares. Moreover, it wasn't listed, so he didn't even have the ability to dilute Chen Zhao's shares. The other party that owned the shares of the brewery was Citibank. Chen Zhao liked the deep cooperation with the bank and the fact that the bank wouldn't interfere with the management. As long as he could continue to make money for the bank would be happy to be his grandson. Therefore, Chen Zhao would rather sell the shares to the bank than to Winnip. Of course, the price was also a factor. Moreover, Winnip was a controlling woman. Once she got the shares, she might not stop even if Chen Zhao was her son-in-law. Fei Lai didn't say anything. After all, neither Chen Zhao nor Winnip wanted Fei Lai to be in a difficult position. After all, being stuck in the middle was the most uncomfortable. Usually, when Winnip contacted Chen Zhao, she would first ask if Fei Lai was okay. Chen Zhao wanted to say that they were talking business when Fei Lai wasn't around. To Winnip, it was business, but to Chen Zhao, it was harassment. Previously, Winnip had wanted to use the shares of Mara Supermarket to exchange for the shares of the brewery. However, Chen Zhao rejected her. Mara Supermarket's value was 4 times higher than Mountain Beer's, but Mara Supermarket was a listed company. However, Mara Supermarket was a listed company. If Chen Zhao got the shares, he could only wait for the value of Mara Supermarket's shares to rise. Mara Supermarket's profits would barely be equal to Mountain Beer's. But with the same shares, the dividends wouldn't be as much as Mountain Beer. Chen Zhao had to be crazy to exchange for Mara Supermarket shares. After harassing Chen Zhao for more than a month, Winnip stopped. Chen Zhao didn't say anything harsh, but his attitude was the same every time. No exchange, no sale. Winnip couldn't force Chen Zhao with a knife. In the end, she could only give up. In the past month, Winnip had also played the emotional card. For example, Fei Lai would inherit the shares in the future. She might even inherit the shares of Mara Supermarket too. Chen Zhao didn't say anything. He wasn't interested in Mara Supermarket. Chen Zhao's way of rejecting Winnip was that if Winnip only wanted to keep the shares, he could transfer the shares Winnip wanted to buy to Fei Lai. Winnip completely gave up on convincing Chen Zhao. Actually, Chen Zhao could understand Winnip's thoughts. This was because Mara Supermarket's current development was largely controlled by Chen Zhao. She was such a strong person. She wouldn't give her fate to someone else so easily, even if that person was her son-in-law. Have you arranged a place for me? Yes, Chen Zhao said. My friend's hotel. You really won't let me stay at your house. Alex looked at Chen Zhao aggressively. Chen Zhao could feel Alex's gaze, but he ignored it. It's too small, Chen Zhao said shamelessly. Chen Zhao didn't want to be awkward. Alex was Jerlin's sister. Plus, he'd had a relationship with Jerlin. To be honest, Chen Zhao didn't understand what kind of feelings Jerlin had for him. Jerlin didn't want to marry. Why would she give birth to Jerlin? When Chen Zhao saw Jerlin, he was so touched. He thanked Jerlin for bringing him this daughter. Chen Zhao had never been a sentimental person. Even when he'd broken up in China, he'd only been sad for a day or two before letting it go. But when he saw Jerlin through the nursery, his emotions rushed to his head. Because of Jerlin, Chen Zhao felt that the world was so bright and beautiful. Looking at Chen Zhao, Alex still said her intention. I want to see that woman. This was what Chen Zhao was afraid of. What's there to see? Can't you just pretend that she doesn't exist? You can see her on Jerlin's birthday too. Chen Zhao still didn't want Alex to see Li. Who knew what her motive was? What if she was there to fight? Let little Jerlin watch her mother and her aunt fight? Coward! Are you that afraid of me seeing her? Is that necessary? Chapter 1466. Are you sure you didn't go the wrong way? Alex looked at the increasingly secluded road. Chen Zhao silently turned his head, his expression dark. Huh. It's too late for you to realize now. What are you talking about? What are you going to do to me? Alex immediately tightened her collar. Do you want to rape and then kill, or kill and then rape? After that, I'll find a place with good feng shui and bury you. No. I'm so scared. You don't have any talent for acting. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. To be honest, I don't understand why you want to live in such a secluded place. Alex was serious. In her opinion, Chen Zhao was rich. Even if he didn't want to live in the city, he didn't have to live in such a secluded place. I'm too poor to buy land in L.A. Alex ignored Chen Zhao's pretense of being poor. A person who could take out a few $1 million a year to support a team of lawyers was considered poor? If he was poor, then close to 100% of the world's people were poor. However, when she saw Mingyue Villa on the cliff and the long coastline in the distance, she finally understood what Chen Zhao meant. If this land was in L.A., it would probably cost $10 billion. But even in a place far from the city, this place was still indescribable. But even in a place far from the city, it was still indescribable. The sunset here, the waves here, the lush green mountains here. There was also the dreamlike villa. Alex could already be considered a rich person, but she still couldn't help but curse. Evil capitalists. Chen Zhao's car entered the parking lot. Alex entered the yard by herself. She saw a woman lying on a bench. A pair of children were lying on her. She recognized the older girl. It was Jerlin. Little Jerlin seemed to have felt something. He abruptly raised his head to look at Alex. But Jerlin didn't recognize Alex. The last time she saw Alex, she was too young. Jerlin tilted her head and looked at Alex. She stared at Alex in a daze. Just then, Phalai woke up. She stood up and turned to look at Alex. "Hello, are you Jerlin's aunt?" Holding a child in one arm, Phalai smiled at Alex. Before Chun Zhao brought Alex here, he didn't tell her either. Even Phalai had never seen Alex before. But Phalai still recognized Alex at first glance. She didn't know why. Maybe it was because Alex had Jerlin's aura on her. "Mom, is she Jerlin's aunt?" Jerlin's eyes widened. Alex walked over. She was sad that little Jerlin had forgotten about her. However, this was inevitable. After all, little Jerlin was only a month old at the time. Alex was even more furious at Qin Zhao. It was all his fault for taking little Jerlin away from her. Alex came forward. "Little Jerlin, did you forget Aunt Alex?" Little Jerlin rolled her eyes and opened her arms. "Aunt Alex, give me a hug." Alex was overjoyed, and Phalai took the opportunity to send little Jerlin into Alex's arms. "Hug, hug, hug." Little Larissa also wanted a hug. Carrying little Jerlin, Alex asked curiously, "Is this your and Chen's child?" "Our second child," Phalai emphasized with a smile. "Then I can hug her too." Phalai also placed little Larissa into Alex's arms. Holding the two little balls in her arms, Alex felt like her heart was about to melt. Qin Zhao had already walked in. He'd purposely delayed the time to come in. He mainly wanted Phalai and Alex to interact first. Phalai glanced at Chun Zhao from the corner of her eye. She could guess Qin Zhao's intentions pretty well. Qin Zhao didn't know how to handle situations like this. How could Alex not understand? This was why women dealt with these situations much more clearly than men. Qin Zhao was putting his thoughts on the two women. If one day a man came out to steal his two daughters, Qin Zhao would probably beat him to death. Alex was a lawyer and a woman, so she was very talkative. She also had a higher EQ than Qin Zhao. If Qin Zhao couldn't solve things rationally, he would solve them with violence. Alex and Phalai had a pleasant chat. They also talked from a woman's perspective. They talked about pregnancy, parenting, beauty. Qin Zhao had a few underlings prepare dinner in the kitchen. Alex didn't expect Qin Zhao to be so good at cooking. Qin Zhao gladly accepted it. But Phalai knew that many of the dishes here were made by the underlings. After dinner, Phalai went to put little Larissa to sleep. Little Jerlin didn't sleep so early. She would definitely go to the beach at this time. However, Jerlin still couldn't press the button for the elevator, so Princess had to do it every time. Alex came to Qin Zhao's side. "Walk with me to the beach." Alex had never been to such an empty beach. She couldn't help but sigh at the evil capitalists again. Little Jerlin was running wildly with a few pets. She could hear Jerlin's laughter every now and then. "It's not bad for Jerlin to follow you," Alex said. "What do you mean it's not bad?" Qin Zhao was very unhappy with Alex's words. "I'm her father. Of course it's best for her to follow me." Alex didn't argue with Qin Zhao. Actually, she knew better than anyone else. However, people always had unrealistic fantasies. If Qin Zhao didn't treat Jerlin well, then she had the right and position to take her away. Or if Phalai didn't like Jerlin, unfortunately there were no ifs. Qin Zhao and Phalai treated Jerlin well. Jerlin was very happy here. Her quality of life wouldn't be worse than if Alex took care of her. "By the way, why don't you hire a few servants for such a big manor? Will you and Phalai be able to handle it?" Alex didn't quite understand. How could two adults manage such a large place? "I don't have money. How about you be a maid? I'll pay you $2,000 a month." Qin Zhao looked at Alex shamelessly. Alex glared at him. "Don't you have a yacht? Why do you want to order another one? You don't understand how rich people think. What about the private planes that rich people have? How come you don't have one? How do you know? You do? No. Qin Zhao shrugged. That's too troublesome. If I put it in a civil airport, I'll need to take care of it and restrict it. If I put it in a private airport, it'll be even more expensive. Plus, I don't go out much. It's too wasteful to buy a private plane. Chapter 14, 67. Alex probably didn't sleep much that night. That night, she checked the original contract that Seagate had sent. After confirming that there were no traps, the two went to Seagate the next day. Although Chen Zhao had already confirmed that he was going to sign the contract with Seagate, Ofer Bill was still relieved when he heard that Chen Zhao was coming. But even if they were going to sign the contract, they wouldn't do it immediately. There were still some details that needed to be negotiated. For example, maintenance, after-sale services, and the price flexibility. They all needed to be negotiated. However, Ofer Lobel's request to the company's legal representative was that everything be done quickly. This contract was a milestone project for Seagate. Even if Seagate made less money, they still hoped to sign the contract as soon as possible. Each of the top companies in the world had completed at least 3 world-class superyacht projects. Seagate was only a large company. Although it had good sales every year, it was all from small and medium-sized yachts. It wasn't that they didn't have the skills for superyachts, but people rarely asked them to customize them. Moreover, Chen Zhao had been introduced by Stephen. In Seagate's eyes, Chen Zhao definitely had a powerful network. That was why Seagate couldn't wait to keep this customer. The final cost was $328 million. The flexible space could add another $30 million, and the down payment was $100 million. It was estimated to be completed in 13 months, which meant that it could be completed before Christmas next year. If it exceeded the time limit, Seagate would have to pay for the delay. But now, the yacht construction technology had been upgraded many times. The construction time had been greatly reduced too. It wasn't like before, where it could easily take 3 or 4 years. Moreover, Seagate had a large shipyard with perfect construction techniques and technology. It was basically impossible to exceed the time limit. Next, it was Alex's job to supervise the construction quality and progress. After signing the contract, Alex went to stay in the hotel. She got along well with Feilai, but it was still a bit awkward. Of course, Qin Zhao had also booked the hotel. It was Dell and Risfar's hotel. Now, their hotel was quite popular. Qin Zhao had helped too. The Dashin beer, nameless wine, and purple brew he provided were all popular among the hotel customers. Alex, you can be my personal legal consultant from now on. Sure. Alex nodded. Private lawyers didn't actually need to pay any fees. They just needed to look for Alex first. Of course, with Chen Zhao and Alex's relationship, Alex would definitely choose to help Qin Zhao first if something happened. Alex still had a lot of things to do, such as discussing the company's legal team with Denver. Chen Zhao arrived at the headquarters of the association. He didn't know if Ruan Faxi, who was captured yesterday, told him anything. Ruan Faxi was currently locked up in the dungeon. There were quite a few residents in the dungeon. They were all captured and locked here by Chen Zhao or other members of the association. Of course, the association's dungeon was not like a real prison. The conditions were much better. Everyone had a single room, and there was an electronic door with a floor-to-ceiling window. There were 20 cubicles in 2 rows. Basically, as long as one stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, the occupants of each cubicle would be able to see each other. Ruan Faxi, on the other hand, was lying on the bed, feeling rather bored. Just then, Moraz came down from upstairs. She came down not only to see her former companions, but also to retrieve Ruan Faxi's copy. The association hadn't had any group activities recently, so Moraz didn't have many opportunities to make contributions. She couldn't even reduce her companion's sentence. "Come out," Moraz said. "The president wants to see you." When Ruan Faxi came yesterday, he'd been beaten up by West. It wasn't magic, but pure beating. Then, more Raz treated him. Ruan Faxi walked out with his head lowered. After walking out of the dungeon, Ruan Faxi was brought to the hall. Because he'd made too many enemies, he would always ask about the organization or power in a city before coming. Not long ago, he'd come to Los Angeles. He'd heard of the supernatural organization, but it was said to be a third-rate organization with few members and weak abilities. So, Ruan Faxi didn't take it to heart. Up until now, he hadn't found anything too powerful about the supernatural organization. But he didn't expect it to be so powerful. This made him confused. Why was the supernatural organization so powerful? Was it because they had the government backing them? It should be noted that in the spirit world, organizations that had a government background were not very important. In China's words, such organizations were like the government's dogs. West stood beside Qin Zhao. West, did you get anything from him? No, he's stubborn, West said. You didn't torture him? Qin Zhao was surprised. Judging from West's attitude toward Ruan Faxi yesterday, there should be some deep hatred between them. Now that Ruan Faxi was in Qin Zhao's hands, he had no reason not to take revenge. But looking at Ruan Faxben, he seemed to be having a good time. Qin Zhao had beaten him into a pig's head yesterday, but the swelling had gone down today, and he'd even gone through treatment. This treatment didn't seem like there was any deep hatred between him and West at all. Qin Zhao didn't ban West. There was no need for him to restrain himself like this, right? Qin Zhao looked at West, confused. West's gaze was calm. He didn't look as excited as when he'd seen Ruan Faxi yesterday. Qin Zhao didn't understand what West was thinking. Was it not easy to attack? He probably didn't have such concerns. Beat him up first. Qin Zhao turned to Klaus. Don't kill him. Huh. Ruan Faxi's mouth gaped open. Don't say anything. You've caused a lot of trouble for me and the organization, so beating you up is already a light punishment. Klaus went up and dragged Ruan Faxi out. Ruan Faxi wanted to resist, but he didn't have Klaus' monstrous strength. He was dragged out of the hall directly. Soon, cries of pain came from outside. West, don't you have a grudge against him? Why don't you take revenge? Qin Zhao asked, confused. President, we lack an alchemist, West said. Ruan Faxi has a bad reputation outside, but he's really talented. His alchemy skills are very high. Chapter 1468. In order to destroy a person's mind, one had to destroy their body first. When Ruan Faxi was dragged in, he was already covered in cuts and bruises. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't do it to destroy his mind. He only did it to help West. Raz, heal him, Qin Zhao said. Raz went up and cast 2 healing spells on Ruan. One reduced the injuries, and the other stopped the pain. If you keep playing dead, I'll beat you up again. Qin Zhao looked at Ruan, who was lying on the ground. Ruan immediately sat up, not daring to play dead anymore. Sir, I'm innocent. Ruan Faxi wanted to clear his name as soon as he opened his mouth. Cut the crap. Did you sell this comb at the magic shop? Yes. So you're purposely hurting people? You have to know that this is against the rules of the supernatural world. Selling highly harmful magical items or artifacts. Plus, this time a normal person was involved and a person died. It happened in Los Angeles, so the supernatural organization has the right to sentence you to death. Do you have anything to say? West said, trying to scare him. West, don't take revenge. I didn't know there was a problem with the comb. You made it. Yes. Ruan lowered his head, his face pale. Then tell me you didn't know there was a problem with it? No. Ruan Faxi shouted. You said it was, and now you say no. Is it true or not? I worked with someone else to make it. Ruan Faxben yelled. Originally, he and I wanted to make a magic tool that could connect to the existence of another dimension. The user could borrow the power of the existence of another dimension, but the final product we made failed. The wooden comb only had a bit of magic left. Compared to our investment, it was a complete failure. So, we put the wooden comb in the magic shop to sell. I didn't think anything would happen. Do you think we'll believe you? You have a criminal record, and it's a notorious one. It really wasn't me. I didn't know this would happen either. But it's already happened. Also, that's not all. Chen Zhao tossed a bill before Ruan. This is the bill for the goods you damaged in the magic shop yesterday. Wait, you have a share too. Ruan Faxi trembled in fear when he saw the bill. The number read $26. 5 million. If you don't resist, the goods won't be damaged, Qin Zhao said matter-of-factly. Also, because there are 2 victims in this incident, one is an ordinary person and the other is a deceased person, so they also asked for compensation, a total of 4 million USD. You have 3 choices, West said. What choice? First, you have to compensate for the loss of the magic shop, as well as the victim's compensation application, and then you'll be locked up in our dungeon for 3 years. Ruan Faxi's body trembled. How could he pay so much money? It was more than $30 million. I don't have that much money, Ruan said with a sad face. Then choose the second option. If you don't pay, we'll directly sentence you to death. Anyway, based on your past misdeeds, killing you is not an injustice. It will also save you the trouble of harming others in the future. Wait, I choose the third option. I choose the third option. Are you sure you want the third option? Yes, I choose the third option. West threw a document and a pen in front of Ruan Faxben. Sign this document. Ruan Faxi opened the document and read. The supernatural organization would temporarily pay for the magic shop and the victim's compensation. Ruan Faxi would also become a temporary member of the supernatural organization. The organization would pay Ruan Faxi a base salary of $10,000 every month. At the same time, they would deduct 50% of the payment. He would be free when he paid the money. After reading the document, Ruan Faxi's hands trembled. He did not have that much money for the first option. The second option was death. The third option was being trapped for the rest of his life. He would have to work for the supernatural organization until his death. The total compensation was $31. 5 million. If he paid $5,000 every month, he would have to pay for 6,300 months, or 525 years. As long as he signed the document, he would be bound by the supernatural organization for the rest of his life. Ruan Faxi looked up at West. West, do you have to be so ruthless? Yes, West said indifferently. Torturing Ruan Faxben was too unskillful. With Ruan Faxi's personality, he might not yield even if he was beaten up a few times. But if he had no freedom for the rest of his life and was ordered around by West, was there anything more painful than that? I choose the second option. Ruan Faxi clenched his teeth and tossed the pen aside. Kill me. Good, you're brave. I admire you, Qin Zhao called. Ruan Faxi was delighted. It seemed that his courage had gained Qin Zhao's approval. Maybe they were just testing him. Qin Zhao's second sentence made Ruan Faxi vomit blood. Give him a dignified death. Ruan Faxi's heart trembled. A dignified death? What was a dignified death? Calm. I have to calm down. He's definitely testing me. Let's go and experience your dignified death, West said with a smile. Just then, Klaus walked up and lifted Ruan Faxi up. Ruan Faxi's legs were trembling. He walked out of the room in trepidation. They were all acting at this time. 2 people pushed a machine in front of Ruan Faxben and turned it on. The machine emitted a loud and high-frequency noise. It was very uncomfortable. What's this? A meat grinder, West said indifferently. Our president rarely uses it to kill people. In fact, Chen Zhao had only used the mincing machine to kill once. Ever since then, Chen Zhao never used the mincing machine to kill again. Too disgusting, don't worry. The process is fast. You might not feel any pain at all, West said softly. West said softly, but you'd better go in quickly. If you go in slowly, it'll be uncomfortable. Do you need help? I can just stuff you in, Klaus said understandingly. Last time, that person rejected my good intentions and said he wanted to go in by himself. Then he went in with his feet first. In the end, half of his body was stuck outside. Chapter 1469. Ruan Faxben shuddered. I suddenly feel like the third option isn't bad. He couldn't hold on anymore. If he did, he'd really be thrown into the meat grinder. Wes sneered. Why was he acting like a big shot here? He knew Ruan Faxben too well. This guy had never been a man who would sacrifice himself for justice. Ruan looked at Chen Zhao. Sir, I'm a member of the supernatural organization now, right? Of course, Chen Zhao said, smiling. You signed the contract. Then I think we should talk about the pay first, Ruan said, scratching his face. Do you think we're giving you too much? Chen Zhao smiled at Ruan. It's okay. I can give you a discount. No, rumble. At this moment, Klaus turned on the meat mincing machine at an untimely time. Ruan Faxi was startled. If they continued talking, their momentum would be weakened. Bandits, these bandits. In the end, Ruan Faxben accepted the contract. It was more like a contract than a contract. It wasn't legally binding. There was even a magic seal on it. Chen Zhao had signed the same contract in the past. Everyone had signed the same magic contract. Okay, you're one of us now. Do your best. Chen Zhao patted Ruan's shoulder with a smile. Ruan Faxi looked at Chen Zhao with tears in his eyes. Arrange a place for him to stay and some work, Chen Zhao said. Oh, and a studio for him. For example, Padalu, Jaleg, Donya Tianchi, Genkira, and Moraz all had their own laboratories or workshops. As for Ruan Faxben, as the most orthodox alchemist, he naturally needed a workshop. After Ruan was taken away, Chen Zhao couldn't help but ask, West, what's the grudge between you and Ruan? Nothing. West clearly didn't want to talk about it. He turned and left. Chen Zhao frowned. He really couldn't understand West's thoughts. In terms of deep hatred, it was understandable that West had killed Ruan Faxben. However, West didn't kill Ruan Faxben. Instead, he pulled him into the association. But to say that there was no enmity, the way West looked at Ruan Faxben was rather strange. Chen Zhao was really curious about the relationship between West and Ruan Faxben. Should he find a chance to ask Ruan Faxben about the situation? But recently, Ruan Faxi should not be in the mood to chat with him. He turned and walked toward the Tower of Trials. At this moment, Moraz caught up. President, please bring me into the trial tower, Moraz said with a red face. What? Bring you into the Tower of Trials? Chen Zhao stared at Moraz in shock. You can bring that too? It's not like you don't know the situation in the training tower. But this is very unfair to me. Padya and I are both support-type witches. There's almost no place for us in the Tower of Trials. Moraz was a healing witch who barely knew any offensive spells. A person entering the Tower of Trials alone would not last more than 10 seconds. 10 seconds was the time it would take for the monster to reach her. She also wanted to be like the other members and go through the levels one by one. But she could not do it at all, unless she changed her magic system. But that was even more impossible. The others wanted to bring her along, but they could not. Gaia could bring her to the second level, but it was too difficult. Once the two-man team entered the second floor, the twisting giant monster that was originally a single person would become an even more difficult, earth-shaking monster. Now, Gaia had passed the second level of the Tower of Trials. She was fighting on the third level, but with more Raz, the team would be wiped out on the second level. More Raz also wanted to be useful in the battle, such as healing Gaia, but he could not do it at all. Patya had the same problem. They all wanted to use their abilities in the Tower of Trials, but most of the time the monsters in the tower would not give them any room to do so. Chen Zhao thought for a moment and said, The first thing you have to do is not to use your abilities. but to protect yourself. If you can't even protect yourself, don't even think about using your abilities. President, I recently learned a new spell, Guardian Light. It can reduce the enemy's damage for a certain period of time. Not only can it be used on companions, but it can also be used on oneself. Is that so? Okay, I'll bring you in, Qin Zhao said, because he teamed up with more Raz. Qin Zhao came to the first level again. The moment he entered the first level, a screen of light appeared on his body. Qin Zhao was stunned. Turning around, he realized that More Raz was casting a spell on him. I don't need it on the first level. Wait until I say I want it. Oh, More Raz removed the spell on Qin Zhao. She had seen Qin Zhao fight before and knew that he was very strong. Her boss, Offit, had been killed by him, but Qin Zhao had not used his full strength back then, so she had a vague idea of his abilities. She just cast a spell on Qin Zhao out of habit. When Gaia had brought her in last time, she had cast Guardian Light on her immediately. She thought that Qin Zhao would do the same. She felt that Qin Zhao was about as strong as Gaia. Moreover, their fighting styles were very similar. They both focused on strengthening. Of course, Gaia could also turn into a fire dragon. Just then, the monsters appeared. Qin Zhao charged at the monsters. More Raz looked at Qin Zhao's figure, just like when Gaia had brought her in last time. Qin Zhao had actively faced the monsters. The difference was that Qin Zhao did not ask for Guardian Light. Qin Zhao fought the monsters with his bare hands. Gaia, on the other hand, used a flaming sword. Qin Zhao was attacked even more times. More Raz made a comparison in her mind. The monsters' attacks were so strong. Would Qin Zhao really be fine? After all, when the monsters attacked her, they would either kill or heavily injure her instantly. But Qin Zhao was actually fine after being attacked so many times. It seemed that the difference between Qin Zhao and Gaia was that Gaia's attacks were higher, while Qin Zhao's defenses were higher. Soon, Qin Zhao had killed 100 monsters. Both received a notification that they had passed. D+. More Raz looked at Qin Zhao. This result was much worse than when Gaia had brought her in last time. She wondered how Qin Zhao was doing. President, do you need some treatment first? No. Qin Zhao shook his head. I'm not injured. Chapter 1470. You go in first, Qin Zhao said. I'll follow. Cast a spell on yourself on the second floor. Just don't get killed instantly. More Raz nodded. She'd been to the second floor of the two-person team before. That feeling was indescribable. If a single person entered the second floor of the Tower of Trials, they would be giant, twisted monsters. If two people entered, they would be Earthshakers. Actually, Earthshakers' attacks were similar to giant, twisted monsters. However, the most annoying thing about Earthshakers was that wherever they stood, the ground would shake. Everything within a 10-meter radius would be like an earthquake. Qin Zhao wanted More Raz to enter the second floor, first to give her time to prepare. There would be a few seconds between the monsters appearing and attacking. If Qin Zhao went first, More Raz would have 2 or 3 seconds less to prepare. This was a big problem for More Raz. More Raz entered the second floor first. Perhaps it was because of his battle instincts, but More Raz looked around first. Then Qin Zhao appeared. He glanced at More Raz. Hurry and cast a spell on yourself. Don't wait for those monsters to appear. Oh, got it. President, do you need it? No. You just have to maintain the spell on yourself. Just then, the Earthshakers appeared in the distance. More Raz remembered clearly that Gaia couldn't put up any resistance against them last time. Qin Zhao watched as the Earthshakers approached. It wasn't his first time facing one. Last time, he'd encountered one when he'd brought Harry's to the 4th floor. Qin Zhao found it strange that Gaia would fail in the two-person team on the 2nd floor with her current strength. Gaia could transform into a fire dragon and fly in the air to attack. The Earthshakers were weak at aerial attacks. Apart from throwing stones, They didn't seem to have any other attack methods. If Gaia turned into a fire dragon, she could kill the Earthshakers by spitting saliva. That was the normal scenario. Chen Zhao didn't know that Gaia had been very confident. She'd been caught off guard, which was why she'd failed on the second floor. When the horde of Earthshakers charged over, Chen Zhao had already charged over. The best way to deal with Earthshakers was to air attack. Chen Zhao didn't need to fly too high. As long as he was more than 1 meter above the ground and avoided the earthquake, the battle would be very easy. Behind him, more Raz had already fallen to the ground due to the earthquake. Fortunately, this kind of earthquake was not fatal. As long as Chen Zhao blocked the Earthshaker's attack, a mere earthquake wouldn't kill more Raz. But it was not good either. More Raz could not even stand up. The ground kept shaking, making her feel nauseous. After Chen Zhao killed 100, the other Earthshakers retreated and the earthquake stopped. Then, more Raz started vomiting. This feeling was too painful. The third floor is a 2-person team. The monster is a wyvern. You have to be careful. I might miss the monster. The monsters on the first and second floor were one-sided attacks. As long as one direction was blocked, the monster would not be able to attack more Raz. However, the monster on the third floor was a wyvern. Chen Zhao couldn't stop all the wyverns in the sky. Moreover, if he intercepted all of them, then it would be meaningless for more Raz to come in with him. For now, Chen Zhao didn't need her to be independent. However, Chen Zhao hoped that she could protect herself. It might not be of much help on the battlefield, but it should at least be able to protect him. After entering the third floor, more Raz's expression became even more serious. Soon, more Raz saw the densely packed wyverns in the sky. The scene was even more shocking than the monster army on the ground. Chen Zhao shot into the sky like an arrow. Instantly, a few wyverns fell to the ground. Just then, a wyvern charged at more Raz. More Raz immediately cast a guardian light on herself. The wyvern's claws slammed onto more Raz's body. In that instant, the light of protection on more Raz dimmed a little, and he staggered a few steps. More Raz hurriedly cast another guardian light. The wyvern spat out a mouthful of acid. More Raz did not dodge and felt pain in her thigh. The acid had corroded her thigh and turned it into a bloody mess. Purification, quick recovery, injury suppression. 3 spells were quickly cast on her. Guardian Light was very effective against both physical and magical attacks. However, it was much less effective against this kind of liquid attack. Although she'd already cast 3 spells, more Raz still felt intense pain in her thigh. However, more Raz did not want to give up just like that. The wyvern wanted to continue attacking more Raz. But suddenly a sword flashed. The wyvern landed. Seeing that Chen Zhao was surrounded, more Raz immediately cast a guardian light on him. However, the guardian light did not even last for a second before it was broken. Helpless, more Raz could only cast another guardian light on Chen Zhao. The result was the same. It was broken instantly again. Just as more Raz was about to cast a third guardian light, Chen Zhao's voice sounded. "Save the magic for yourself. I don't need it." Chen Zhao did not pass immediately because he wanted more Raz to train his self-protection abilities. If he relied on himself to pass, it would be meaningless for more Raz. At this moment, another wyvern flew over. The wyvern crashed into more Raz. More Raz was sent flying. The impact had exceeded the upper limit of the guardian light. Chen Zhao glanced at more Raz. He was hesitant about whether to save more Raz or not. Actually, Chen Zhao had purposely let all the wyverns he'd missed out on. However, more Raz clearly did not plan to give up. More Raz charged toward the group of wyverns. Another wyvern was released. More Raz was pincered from the front and back. Just as the 2 wyverns were about to grab him, more Raz rolled to the side. Although his movements were rather clumsy, he managed to avoid the attacks of the 2 wyverns in a thrilling manner. The 2 wyverns crashed into each other. They did not die directly, but they were heavily injured. Raz did not know where he got his courage from. He grabbed a rock and charged at one of the wyverns, smashing it hard on the wyvern's head. Chapter 14:71. Raz wasn't strong, but she grabbed a rock and smashed it hard. Soon, half of the wyvern's head was smashed into a bloody mess. It wasn't dead yet, but it was already gasping for air. The other wyvern also recovered. It was about to attack Raz, but Chen Zhao had already acted. Chen Zhao was somewhat surprised. He didn't think that Raz could defeat a wyvern alone. This way of winning was quite a trick. If he had to do it again, Raz might not be able to do it. But no matter what, Raz was a support-type witch. It was already a very impressive challenge for her to kill a wyvern with her own abilities. Raz wiped the blood off her face and looked up at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao hovered in the air. Looking at Raz, he gave her a thumbs up. Amazing! If it was someone else, Chen Zhao definitely wouldn't praise them. Wyverns weren't very strong. At least for most people in the association, they could easily defeat 1 or 2 wyverns. But Raz was different. She was a support-type witch. She had almost no attack power, but she still killed a wyvern. So, she deserved Chen Zhao's thumbs up. Behind, Raz saw a wyvern charge toward Chen Zhao's back. Chen Zhao casually punched behind him, and the wyvern's head was smashed. Raz looked at Chen Zhao. It was too easy, even though it was the 3rd level, even though it was a 2-person monster. But Chen Zhao still crushed it easily. She didn't see that Chen Zhao was struggling at all. It had to be known that apart from Chen Zhao, only Gaia could reach the 3rd level. Also, with Chen Zhao's help, Helith reached the 4th level. The others hadn't experienced the 3rd level at all. Soon, Chen Zhao killed another 100 wyverns and received the information that he had cleared the stage. But the result was still not good. Chen Zhao basically didn't dodge the wyvern's attacks. The more times he was attacked, the longer it took to clear the level, and the worse his result would be. On the 4th floor, the 2-person team is the Thunderbird. You don't know when a small lightning bolt will fall on your head. I can't help you with this problem, so you have to rely on yourself. If you can't get through it, you'll be killed instantly. Raz said, Then I'll cast 3 guardian lights first. Do you need them? I don't need it. I have a very high resistance to lightning. The Thunderbirds on the 4th floor are no threat to me. All right, Raz said, helplessly. He didn't even have a chance to cast Guardian Light on Chen Zhao in the first 4 levels. He didn't even know why he was here. But this also proved Chen Zhao's strength. From the looks of it, his president was not just a little stronger than Gaia. Raz immediately cast 3 layers of Guardian Light on himself. Then, the 2 of them entered the 4th floor. Not long after, Raz heard a sharp sound from afar, accompanied by bolts of lightning. When they were more than 10 meters away, a bolt of lightning descended from the sky and landed on Raz's head. In an instant, a layer of Guardian Light disappeared. Although Raz had been paying special attention, the Thunderbird's long-range and traceless attack still caught her off guard. Raz immediately cast another layer of Guardian Light on himself. Chen Zhao also went up. At the same time, he couldn't help but ask, since this Guardian Light can be layered, why don't you cast a few more layers? At most, I can only use 3 layers of Guardian Light. Every additional layer will double the mana consumption. The second Guardian Light will require me to use twice the amount of mana, and the third will require me to use 4 times the amount of mana. If it's a single Guardian Light, can you cast it continuously? If it's a single Guardian Light, I can cast it continuously for 10 minutes. If it's intermittent, I can cast it for a long time, Raz said. Boom, boom. Just then, 2 more bolts of lightning landed on Raz's head. After the 2 Guardian Lights were destroyed, Raz immediately cast 2 more Guardian Lights on himself. Chen Zhao evaluated inwardly. This meant that Raz's mana recovery speed should be quite fast. He must have mastered a special recovery method. Nevertheless, Raz's Guardian Light spell was quite effective. How's the Guardian Light's defense? Chen Zhao asked as he fought the Thunderbird. Most of the Thunderbird's attacks landed on Qin Zhao. However, a few stray bullets would occasionally hit Raz's head. It's good against physical and magical attacks, but it's very weak against liquid-type attacks. Curse attacks are completely ineffective. What about other attacks? It has a certain heat insulation effect. The change in air pressure will disintegrate the Guardian Light's defense. If it was an invasion like Kansmosa's last time, if Qin Zhao didn't suppress Kansmosa, another Raz would greatly affect the outcome of the battle. It could even be said that Raz's influence on the battlefield was no less than that of strong people like Gaia, Halles, and Norma. Perhaps Qin Zhao had underestimated support-type witches in the past. It wasn't just Raz. Perhaps Pattaya also had potential to be unearthed. He should try to bring Pattaya with him to various missions. Compared to the Wyverns on the 3rd level, the Thunderbird on the 4th level posed no threat to Qin Zhao at all. Not only did the Thunderbird's lightning attack not harm Qin Zhao, but it also replenished his mana. Moreover, the Thunderbird's physical attack was even weaker than the Earthshaker on the 2nd level. Qin Zhao didn't use any mana, so the Thunderbird couldn't do anything. If Qin Zhao hadn't purposely stalled for time, he would have killed 100 already. However, Qin Zhao also realized that this level of attack wasn't much of a challenge to Raz. He wanted to see if there was anything on the 5th level that could make Raz more challenging. Soon, Qin Zhao met the requirement to pass the 4th level. He got an F, which was extremely difficult. However, Qin Zhao didn't know what kind of monsters were on the 5th level. Last time, he'd only brought Halles to the 4th level before she'd been killed by lightning. Be careful on the 5th level, Qin Zhao reminded. I don't know what it's like on the 5th level. I've never done a 5th level duo before. I understand. I'll be careful. Chapter 1472. On the 5th level, there were 3-headed dragons, mixed blood dragons. Strangely, the more heads other species had, the stronger they were. However, it was the opposite for dragons. The more heads they had, the weaker they were. For example, Mikados and the 3-headed dragon he had encountered before. However, Qin Zhao didn't know what monsters they would encounter if they entered the 5th level. When Qin Zhao and Raz entered the 5th level, there were no monsters in the distance. Qin Zhao remembered that the 3-headed dragon had emerged from the cracked ground. Would the monster this time also come out from underground? Be careful. The attack might come from underground, Qin Zhao warned. Yes, President. Apart from Qin Zhao, no one else had come to the 5th level before. Raz was excited and terrified at the same time. She didn't know what they would face next or which level Qin Zhao would take her to. Suddenly, a hand burst out of the ground and grabbed Raz's ankle. Raz jumped in fright. The 3 layers of Guardian Light on her body were instantly pierced. The owner of the hand was too strong. He crushed Raz's ankle directly. Ah! Raz screamed. Thankfully, Qin Zhao acted in time and cut off the hand that had popped out of the ground. Just then, wobbling corpses started emerging from the ground. These corpses were slightly taller than humans, and each of them was dragging a black greatsword. Their heads were tilted, their faces expressionless. There was a strong corpse aura on their bodies, but they weren't rotten like zombies. Death Warriors, that was their name. In the Tower of Trials, all monsters had names and the trial takers could see them. Raz quickly cast healing spells on herself, suppressing her injuries and recovery light. However, because Raz's ankle bone had been completely crushed, the low-level recovery light wasn't very effective. The Death Warriors started attacking the two. The air suddenly froze. 3 Death Warriors had already charged toward Qin Zhao and Raz. So fast! Raz couldn't even see the Death Warrior's movements with his naked eyes. The three black swords were already slashing toward their heads. Chen Zhao was even faster. He swung the stone sword in a circle and knocked the three Death Warriors away. "How are you?" "It's affecting my movement a bit, but I can still hold on," Raz said. "Good." Chen Zhao nodded. The speed of these Death Warriors was quite fast, and they were quite strong. Although their bodies were dozens of times weaker than the three-headed dragon, their lethality was far above that of the three-headed dragon. "I may not be able to protect you completely, but the first thing you need to do is to protect yourself." "I understand." At this moment, the Death Warrior launched another attack. The attack this time was even fiercer, and there were even more people attacking at the same time. Although they had no consciousness, they knew how to fight. Some were horizontal slashes, some were vertical slashes, and some were diagonal slashes. Chen Zhao reached out and grabbed Raz's collar. Without caring whether she was willing or not, his other hand had already blocked the sword for Raz. Raz's hands suddenly shot out golden light. Light barrier. A thin light wall appeared in front of Raz. However, the light barrier did not seem to have any blocking function, and the Death Warrior easily passed through it. Just as Chen Zhao was confused, the Death Warrior suddenly slowed down. "Hey, this spell's pretty good." Chen Zhao killed 2 Death Warriors in passing. "It's only effective against undead creatures," Raz said. Raz said, "The light barrier will attach a layer of holy light to the bodies of undead creatures it comes into contact with, thus affecting their bodily functions. Even so, it's still a pretty good spell. However, the light barrier could not last for long. After a few Death Warriors touched the holy light, the light barrier disappeared. Chen Zhao tried his best to protect Raz, but Raz did not just stand there. She remembered Chen Zhao's words. "Protect yourself first before you can protect others." These Death Warriors were still a limited threat to Chen Zhao, but they were a huge threat to Raz. Their speed, strength, and battle techniques all made it difficult for Raz to survive. Chen Zhao had an idea. In a chaotic battle, having Agars and Raz work together seemed like a good combination. They could stand guard at the back and protect Raz at the same time. However, Chen Zhao still wanted to try Patya. Patya was also a founding member. Patya's war dance was also very effective, but it was not enough. Patya's war dance was still limited and too simple. Chen Zhao hoped that Patya could be like Raz. She had her own specialty and more diverse spells. Raz's battle awareness was not bad. Even though she was only a support-type witch, she could still survive tenaciously as long as Chen Zhao did not collapse. Seeing that Chen Zhao seemed to be in a tough battle, Raz could not help but ask, "President, do you need holy light glory?" "Definitely not. I can only use this spell when I really need it." Chen Zhao wanted to know Raz's ultimate move, Holy Light Glory. It could recover everyone's magic power, but this move could only be used once a year. This was the Tower of Trials. It was too wasteful to use Holy Light Glory here. If these Death Warriors were facing members of the supernatural organization and Chen Zhao was not present, Chen Zhao suspected that the organization would be wiped out. This was really possible. These lone Death Warriors were already about as strong as Gaia. Their strength, speed, and techniques were all very strong. Chen Zhao had relied on his absolute strength to suppress them, which was why he could kill them. At this moment, Chen Zhao suddenly felt that the underground treasure hunt was really necessary. Chen Zhao did not know if he would encounter a group of powerful enemies like the Death Warriors in the future. However, Chen Zhao felt threatened by the Death Warriors. Just then, the stone sword in Chen Zhao's hand shattered. Chen Zhao still had 6,999 stone swords, but he still planned to change his weapons. Chen Zhao took out the black trident. The black trident was much more powerful than the stone sword. Chen Zhao looked around. A dozen death warriors were sent flying at the same time. More Raz's eyes hardened. She did not expect Qin Zhao to be hiding more power. With the black trident in his hand, Qin Zhao's aura changed too. With the black trident, he could destroy the death warriors with just the weight and inertia of the trident without using the power of water. Chapter 1473. Qin Zhao wasn't willing to take out the black trident. Taking it out would mean the end of the war. The death warriors were indeed powerful, but facing absolute power, they seemed insignificant. This also lost the purpose of training more Raz. Even more Raz could feel that the situation had changed completely after Qin Zhao took out the black trident. These death warriors would basically die if they touched the black trident. But Qin Zhao was more excited about the 6th floor's guardian boss. The last time Qin Zhao was alone, he'd faced an abyss demon. Now, there was an abyss demon's corpse on the 3rd floor of the association's basement. But the demon's corpse now belonged to Helis. Qin Zhao had promised Helis to give the demon's corpse to her. Helis wanted to control the demon's corpse and use it as her puppet to fight for her. However, the abyss demon was far more powerful than Helis when it was alive. So, even after more than half a year, Helis still couldn't control the demon's corpse. If Helis could completely control the corpse of the abyssal demon and turn it into her undead puppet, her strength would definitely increase exponentially. She would surpass Gaia and become the strongest person in the association after Qin Zhao. Of course, the puppet wouldn't have its full power when it was alive, but it would definitely have 80%. Qin Zhao promised to give the demon's corpse to Helis and let her turn it into a puppet. However, Qin Zhao had another request: absolute control. The abyss demon was too powerful. If Helis could only barely control it, it might go out of control. Once the puppet went out of control, it would cause great damage or even death. Qin Zhao didn't want to see this. That was why he made this request. If Helis' puppet went out of control, Qin Zhao would destroy it himself. The 6th floor has a guardian boss. There aren't many, but they're shockingly powerful. I don't know what monsters we'll encounter on the 6th floor, so you don't have to participate. Stay as far away as you can. Don't think that you have to participate. There's no need. If you insist on participating in a battle that's beyond your abilities, you'll die, Qin Zhao said. More Raz wasn't convinced, but he still had to listen to Qin Zhao's orders. When the two entered the 6th floor, there was a huge abyss before them. Looking at the huge abyss, Qin Zhao was confused. Did it climb out of the abyss again? At this moment, a huge arm reached out from the abyss, grabbing onto the edge of the abyss. More Raz almost fell to the ground in fear when he saw the huge arm. Now she understood what he meant. This was indeed not a battle she could participate in. Such a huge monster, as long as she was lightly touched, she would be out of the game. She had never been to the lowest basement of the headquarters because she was a captive. She hadn't been fully recognized by the other members yet, so the other members were still a little wary of her. After all, they were enemies in the past, and they had never worked together before. How could there be trust between them? Qin Zhao was no stranger to this arm, because it was the arm of the abyss demon. However, now that the duo had joined, was there no change at all? Not long after, the abyssal demons climbed up. But at this time, another abyssal fiend arm stretched out. 2 of them? No, a 3rd abyssal demon soon crawled out. 3 abyss demons. Qin Zhao understood. This meant that it was 3 times more difficult for a duo than for a single person. After the 3 abyssal demons gathered, the battle officially began. 6 beams of demonic light shot out from their eyes and focused on Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao didn't want to take the beams head-on. 6 beams of light. Qin Zhao's body flashed, and he circled behind the middle abyssal demon. The black trident in his hand swept at the back of the abyssal demon's neck, cutting off a chunk of flesh. The first abyssal demon was killed instantly. Its huge body fell to the ground. Only half of its neck was left, for Qin Zhao Whether it was 1 or 3 abyssal demons, they were all in the past. Chen Zhao wouldn't stay where he was. Chen Zhao had fought against abyssal demons countless times. Previously, he'd always used them to test his moves, because, in reality, Chen Zhao had an enemy, an abyssal demon. But Chen Zhao killed it later. So, Chen Zhao knew the various attack methods, abilities, and spells of the abyssal demons like the back of his hand. Then Chen Zhao attacked the second one. It was another instant kill. Then the third one. The entire process only took 3 minutes from start to finish. Then Raz, who was hiding in the distance, received the pass information. The pass information was 3S. Compared to the previous clear results, it was a completely different concept. Previously, he'd gotten F, E, and D scores. He didn't even get a C. But this time, Chen Zhao was decisive. In 3 short minutes, he'd killed the suspense. Could it be that this was his true strength? Raz stared at Chen Zhao in disbelief. Only now did Chen Zhao make her feel like she was suffocating. Raz rarely came to the Tower of Trials, but she knew that Gaia, the strongest in the association, had only reached the 3rd level. Moreover, it was a solo level. But Chen Zhao carried her and almost didn't rely on her abilities to reach the 6th level. She didn't know how to describe Chen Zhao's terrifying combat ability anymore. "Let's go to the 7th level," Chen Zhao said. "President, which level can you take me to?" "I don't know. If I'm alone, I'm currently on the 9th level. I don't know which level I can take you to. I want to see too." Of course, if he wanted to continue, he had to protect Raz first. The attacks of the monsters behind would also increase. Raz's role was negligible. It could even be said that he had no effect at all. But Chen Zhao wanted to know what kind of monsters he would face later and how much of a challenge it would be. The monsters on the 7th level were lava giants. Chen Zhao's first weapon, the bronze sword, had been destroyed in the fight against the lava giants. Chen Zhao still kept the bronze sword's broken sword. After all, it was a very memorable weapon. He didn't know what kind of monsters they would face on the 7th level, but he was sure that they would be stronger than the lava giants. Chen Zhao turned around and glanced at Raz. Ready. Chapter 1474. Chen Zhao and Raz entered the 7th floor at the same time. Before them was a huge crater. Last time, a large number of lava giants had charged out from this crater. This time, it wasn't the lava giants, but the immortal birds. Yes, they were the immortal birds that Chen Zhao had encountered underground. However, they were different from the immortal bird that had half a territory. These immortal birds hadn't reached the clear sky realm yet. Their speed and strength were much higher than the death warriors on the 5th floor. They could also breathe fire. Most importantly, they were hard to kill. Chen Zhao's black trident shattered the immortal birds, turning them into meat paste. But the next moment they reformed. Chen Zhao had to kill them a few times, each time before they would truly die. This also increased the difficulty and intensity. This time he didn't have to kill 100, but 1,000. Chen Zhao felt the difficulty suddenly increase. After fighting for a long time, Chen Zhao only killed a few. There were simply too many immortal birds around him. After killing them once and circling around, he couldn't recognize them anymore. He couldn't continue like this. He would either die of exhaustion or fight for too long. Moreover, Chen Zhao wanted to go to the 8th floor. If this continued, the immortal birds might break through Chen Zhao's defense line and attack Raz. Raz definitely couldn't resist the immortal birds' attacks. By now, Raz could also feel Chen Zhao's pressure. It seemed that this was Chen Zhao's limit. Nevertheless, Raz was already very satisfied to see the 7th floor. Originally, Raz had thought that it would be enough after the 2nd floor. She had never thought that Chen Zhao could bring her to the 7th floor. At the same time, she had witnessed a true battle between monsters. That's right. In Raz's eyes, Chen Zhao was an absolute monster. However, Chen Zhao clearly didn't plan to give up just like that. The dark lava under Chen Zhao's feet instantly spread out. More Raz had never seen Chen Zhao do this. His jaw dropped. He stared at Chen Zhao in shock. After the dark lava reached a diameter of more than 30 meters, it pulled upwards like a piece of cloth. A dozen immortal birds were wrapped inside. At the edge of the dark lava, Chen Zhao could see the immortal birds trying to break through. However, the dark magma was viscous, and it was far tougher than it looked. The phoenix inside quickly lost its resistance. The dark magma tightened. Compared to the living, undying bird they encountered last time, it was much weaker. These undying birds weren't actually that powerful. Their biggest advantage was that they were hard to kill. It took a few tries to kill them, which increased Chen Zhao's workload. But the dark lava solved this problem perfectly. After Chen Zhao used dark lava, his efficiency increased a lot. Chen Zhao directly used dark lava in the meat grinder mode. Phoenix's ability to rise from the ashes was immediately weakened. More Raz was already dumbfounded by what he saw. However, this was one of the few tough battles that Chen Zhao had. Looking at Chen Zhao's past experiences, there was nothing that he could call a bitter battle. One was the battle in the Amazon rainforest. The other battle was with the Black Dragon on the 9th floor. Compared to the previous two battles, the difficulty and intensity of this battle were the lowest. After about an hour of fighting, the battle finally ended. There was still residual heat in the air. "President, are we still going to the 8th floor?" More Raz asked. "Of course." "But I can't help at all," More Raz said, troubled. "I want to see what kind of trouble the 8th floor will give me," Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao felt that More Raz would definitely die if he entered the 8th floor. The 8th floor was above the sea, without any footholds. Chen Zhao could only pull More Raz into the air. Otherwise, More Raz would have no chance of survival. Chen Zhao also needed to fight. He couldn't keep More Raz in the air. The two entered the 8th floor. Chen Zhao grabbed More Raz. "President, this is the 8th floor." The two were hundreds of meters in the air. Even at this height, they still couldn't see the end. Chen Zhao was curious about what kind of monster would appear next. At this moment, a multicolored light appeared on the horizon in the distance. What was that? Some creature seemed to have dyed the seawater colorful. The vibrant colors spread to the bottom of the two. Rainbow-absorbing jellyfish. These jellyfish weren't big compared to the previous monsters. At 4 to 5 meters, they seemed weak. They were also very slow. Chen Zhao didn't find any attack power. Were these jellyfish here to be funny? They were much weaker than the chaotic ocean monster on the 8th floor. Chen Zhao didn't find any threat at all. Were they as poisonous as the jellyfish in real life? But he had the glutton bloodline, so he wasn't afraid of poison. The glutton bloodline was the only demon bloodline that wouldn't be poisoned. Chen Zhao glanced at More Raz. "Do you want me to let go directly or lower and let go?" Holding More Raz, he clearly couldn't fight. However, regardless of whether he let go directly or let go after descending, Chen Zhao felt that More Raz had no chance of survival. As long as he fell into the sea, More Raz would be eliminated. "Lower. I still want to struggle." After descending to a few meters, Chen Zhao let go of More Raz. At the same time, he dove into the sea. As for More Raz's life and death, Chen Zhao couldn't care less. But the moment he dove into the sea, he felt his magic power pour out like a blood hemorrhage. 3 seconds. In just 3 seconds, Chen Zhao's magic power was completely gone. No matter how much magic the small world recovered, it would disappear in an instant. These jellyfish could absorb magic power? That's right, they could absorb magic. After absorbing Chen Zhao's magic power, their bodies started changing. The colorful colors turned inky black, and their tentacles lashed at Chen Zhao like whips. Chen Zhao had to admit that this was a type of hell creature he'd never seen before. Their attacks and fighting methods were also new. Chun Zhao's body was still strong and he could still fight. However, his mana being absorbed was indeed a huge problem for him. The jellyfish's tentacles swept across Chun Zhao's body and he immediately felt numb. They also had a paralyzing poison attack, but the numbness disappeared quickly. The glutton bloodline was working. Chapter 1475. Compared to Chun Zhao, who focused on physical attacks and strong defense, the jellyfish were still pitifully weak. Even though the jellyfish could absorb magic power and turn it into physical attacks, its attack power was still pitifully weak. However, they were helpless against an enemy like Chun Zhao, who specialized in physical attacks and defense. If the other people in the association encountered them, they would probably end up in a miserable state. Chun Zhao waved the black trident. Because he had no magic power at all, his stamina was the only thing he could rely on. Moreover, the jellyfish absorbed magic power too quickly. It was so fast that Chun Zhao's small world and deep-sea domain couldn't keep up with the jellyfish's absorption. It had to be known that under normal circumstances, even if Chun Zhao used 10,000 spells returned to 1,000 sword control and dark lava for more than 10 hours without stopping, he could still maintain the small world's recovery speed. If he had 0 magic power now, it would only take half an hour for his magic power to fully recover. However, the thousands of jellyfish around him were absorbing magic power much faster than Chun Zhao's recovery speed. Moreover, they didn't absorb it through contact. Instead, they directly absorbed Chun Zhao's magic power through the seawater. Just then, Chun Zhao suddenly realized that Raz wasn't dead. What happened to her? She wasn't dead? Her magic power wasn't sucked away? And how could she fight against the jellyfish that could attack with physical attacks? Chun Zhao waved the black trident. Fortunately, even though Chun Zhao had no magic power, he could still move in the water. Chun Zhao focused on Raz to see how she could protect herself. However, after a few glances, Chun Zhao realized something. Raz had used some kind of spell to make her aura disappear. She could still be seen with the naked eye, but jellyfish didn't have vision. Their only senses were the nerves of touch. Using this method, Raz managed to avoid the jellyfish's magic absorption. This method might seem useless, but it was actually quite useful. Some opponents just didn't have vision. For example, the crypt demons were light averse. Of course, the crypt demons also had heat detection and scent detection abilities, but not all creatures had these 2 abilities. So, Raz's spell was pretty good. Actually, Chun Zhao's element countered the jellyfish. The biggest advantage of the rainbow-absorbing jellyfish was that it could turn its opponents into ordinary people. But Chun Zhao wasn't an ordinary person after losing his magic power, so this kind of attack was useless against him. Of course, their vitality was still quite tenacious, although it didn't have the ability to be reborn multiple times like the phoenix. But sometimes, Chun Zhao might not even be able to kill them with one attack. After nearly an hour, he finally received the notification that he had cleared the stage. And this time, the result was unprecedentedly bad. A result that had never appeared before. Previously it was still possible to calculate the number of attacks, but on this floor it was basically impossible to calculate the exact number of attacks. Actually, if Chun Zhao had known about the characteristics of the rainbow-absorbing jellyfish, he wouldn't have known about it. As long as he didn't go into the water and use the mouth of gluttony to fire the verbal cannon, he would still have a chance of passing unscathed. But now he was considering whether to bring more Raz to the 9th floor. 1 black dragon was already too much for Chun Zhao to handle. Would he be able to handle another level that was 3 times stronger? Chun Zhao wasn't confident. Plus, his magic was still recovering. Starting from 0, it would take at least half an hour for it to recover to full. More Raz's survival was beyond Chun Zhao's expectations. President, do you want to continue? Chun Zhao looked at more Raz. The single person on the 9th floor is a purebred black dragon. Last time I barely beat it. This time I don't know if I should bring you up. Ninth floor. President, I can leave the Tower of Trials. Chen Zhao thought for a long while. But I improved again after last time. I don't think that Black Dragon is still a problem. I want something more exciting. More Raz admired Chen Zhao now. The indescribable power made her gasp in amazement. At the same time, she thought of how stupid of it was to lead them to attack the supernatural organization last time. President, I have a special way to recover magic power. Maybe you can try. Is this your family's inheritance? Chen Zhao asked. If it was usually not allowed to be leaked. Chen Zhao didn't want more Raz to get into trouble because of this. No matter what, she was his subordinate. No, I thought of it myself, Moraz said. Moraz said, when I was with Offit in the past, I was always scolded by him because my magic power couldn't keep up. Later, I kept thinking about how to increase my magic power. However, the time needed to increase my magic power was too long. Chen Zhao nodded. That was true. Even the growth of his own magic power seemed to take a long time compared to the overall situation. Moreover, it was more Raz. Then I thought of a way. Since I can't increase my magic power level in a short time, why not increase my recovery speed? If I can increase my magic power recovery speed, I can last longer in battle and release more spells. That was the logic and everyone knew it. But the key was how many people could do it? How did you do it? More Raz nodded. Mental power. Releasing mental power can attract more spiritual chi, but there's a certain risk. It'll attract some harmful spirits. If they're absorbed, they'll pollute my own magic power. It'll be very troublesome to purify my own magic power. Chen Zhao couldn't release his mental power, even though it was quite strong. His mental power was quite strong, but it required a certain technique to release it. Looks like there's a certain risk in this method, Chen Zhao said. If you're fighting spirit-type enemies, it's best not to use this method to recover magic power. It's too risky. I'll continue to improve, Moraz said. Then keep working hard. I have high hopes for you. Chen Zhao felt that he'd recovered 30% of his magic power. He wanted to go to the 9th floor in his best condition. After all, his destined enemy was on the 9th floor. The handsome guy had once said that he had to be careful at all times when facing his enemy. He was like this to Chen Zhao. It should be the same to the Black Dragon. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1476. Chen Zhao and more Raz came to the 9th floor. A familiar aura spread over from the north. But just then, 2 more auras came from the southwest. The 2 auras from the southwest arrived first. A silver dragon and a red dragon landed on the ground. More Raz was so scared that her limbs turned to jelly. The 2 draconic auras made it hard for her to breathe. Chen Zhao gritted his teeth. They were actually 2 dragons of completely different elements. Like the black dragon, they were both purebred dragons. The black dragon and the fire dragon were both fire elemental. The difference was that the black dragon could use dark elemental magic, while the fire dragon was pure fire. Chen Zhao was more curious about the silver dragon's element. Chen Zhao could only vaguely feel the silver dragon's aura. Because Chen Zhao was also blocked by the draconic aura, he couldn't feel anything else. Just then, the black dragon arrived too. Without a front claw, it landed before Chen Zhao. You again. You're here again. Cruelty and hatred appeared in the black dragon's eyes. More Raz was already sitting on the ground. 3 waves of dragons might came crashing down, not to mention protecting herself. She couldn't even muster the slightest bit of mana. She was completely suppressed. If Chen Zhao didn't have the protection of the draconic aura, his magic would be suppressed by at least 60%, just like more Raz. Chen Zhao had no chance of winning against the 3 dragons. Fortunately, Chen Zhao had the draconic aura. The draconic aura was ineffective against the same race. However, Chen Zhao was very suspicious about the handsome black dragon. Even though it was only a projection, as an ancestral dragon, it still gave Chen Zhao an unparalleled shock. The handsome young man had never revealed his strength, and neither had Samuel. Thus, the ancestral dragon was undoubtedly the most terrifying existence Chen Zhao had ever seen. Compared to the ancestral dragon's projection, the 3 dragons before him were like 3 earthworms. Of course, Chen Zhao wasn't sure if he could win against 3 earthworms. "Herbella, do you know these 2 humans?" the silver dragon asked curiously. "My front claw was broken because of him," the black dragon said coldly, its tone filled with resentment. Chen Zhao was curious. There wasn't just 1 or 3 dragons on the 9th floor. Perhaps there were many dragons? If he came alone, he would only encounter the black dragon. Then, after killing the black dragon would no longer exist? In the future, when others come to the 9th floor, they won't encounter the black dragon anymore? The silver dragon and the fire dragon looked at each other. To be able to break the claws of the black dragon Hybla, he was definitely not weak. "Can you stand up? If you can stand up, then stay away." More Raz had heard from Chen Zhao that there was a black dragon guarding the 9th floor. She had originally thought that it would be the dragon that Gaia had transformed into. But when she faced it head-on, she realized how foolish her thoughts were. The 3-headed dragon in front of him was completely different from the fire dragon that Gaia had transformed into. From their dragon might to their bodies, it was unknown how many times weaker they were. The difference in body length was more than 10 times. The 3 dragons were all more than 100 meters long. Their sky-covering bodies would cause anyone to tremble in fear at first glance. But Mor Raz had also recovered a little. He pushed himself up with difficulty and moved backwards. Chen Zhao took a deep breath and took out the black trident. All techniques returned to one: darkness assimilation. Black and red patterns covered Chen Zhao's body. The 3 dragons didn't look down on Chen Zhao just because he was human. Since Chen Zhao could heavily injure the black dragon, he could also hurt them. Even though it was 1 against 3, they still didn't dare to be careless. In a battle of the same level, anything could happen. The battle was about to start, but the 3 dragons and 1 person were still in a stalemate. Finally, the fire dragon moved first with its mouth. The fire dragon took a deep breath. Its neck bulged like a frog's balloon. Then a terrifying fireball that looked like a small sun shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao kicked with all his strength. He didn't know how fast he was. When he reached a certain speed, he suddenly felt a wall of air blocking his speed, causing him to pause. But Chen Zhao's strength exploded again and broke through the wall. Instantly, there was a shattering sound in the air. After breaking through the wall, Chen Zhao felt that he was even faster. There was no more obstruction. Is that a wall of air? Is it the so-called sound barrier? Chen Zhao's thoughts spun, but he didn't stop. Before the 3 dragons could react, Chen Zhao had already reached the silver dragon's belly. The black trident enlarged, turning into a huge trident dozens of meters long. Chen Zhao stabbed toward the silver dragon's belly. The silver dragon felt a fatal threat and instinctively used a life-saving technique. Clang! Chen Zhao felt as if the trident had stabbed into an iron block. Ice shards flew everywhere. The silver dragon's entire body turned into ice. It was just like the black dragon's ultimate move, bloodline pressure. It could freeze the enemy instantly. The silver dragon's ultimate move was absolute ice. It could turn its body into solid ice. This was a killing move that Chen Zhao had planned for a long time. He didn't think that it would still fail, but Chen Zhao reacted very quickly. He didn't regret it. Instead, he changed from stabbing to sweeping. The huge black trident swept across the silver dragon's front claw. It didn't break the claw, but it made the silver dragon's huge body lie on the ground. Freeze! The black dragon also attacked. Chen Zhao's body froze instantly. Then a dragon tail covered in scorching flames swept across. It smashed Chen Zhao into the air. Qin Zhao stabilized his body that was flying backward. The silver dragon also stood up. As expected, fighting 1 against 3 was too much pressure, Qin Zhao thought. But he still wanted to try. After all, dark assimilation was a new move that he developed. It could be considered as strengthening the foundation of all returns to 1. Now that the black dragon and silver dragon had used their ultimate moves, what would the fire dragon do? Chen Zhao looked at the fire dragon. Sensing Chen Zhao's gaze, the fire dragon immediately realized that Chen Zhao's next attack would definitely be directed at him. Without saying anything else, Chen Zhao charged toward the fire dragon. The acceleration this time was even smoother than the first time he broke through the air wall. Speed was Chen Zhao's greatest advantage. Even the 3 dragons couldn't do anything to him. The black dragon kept staring at Chen Zhao. Even he couldn't catch Chen Zhao's figure. Fortunately, his efforts didn't go to waste. He caught it. Freeze! Instantly, the black dragon's bloodline pressure pressed down on Chen Zhao again. Chen Zhao withstood it immediately. But just then, his lips curled into a smile. His target wasn't the fire dragon, but the black dragon. He knew that every time the black dragon used bloodline pressure, it would enter a temporary weakness. The weakness was very short, but it was enough for Chen Zhao. Chapter 1477. The 3 dragons were caught off guard by Chen Zhao's sudden change of direction. Suddenly, a spark bloomed before Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao passed through the spark without hesitation, but another explosion followed, even more intense than before. Chen Zhao didn't turn around, but he could feel that it was the fire dragon's attack. The fire dragon's eyes glowed red. Wherever he looked, there would be an explosion. This was the fire dragon's bloodline, Red Lotus Fire. This was also his trump card. It wasn't like the black dragon's control move or the silver dragon's ability to turn itself into ice. It attacked directly. As long as it was within a certain range, it could cause an explosion with a thought. However, the fire dragon realized that the explosion didn't seem to hurt Chen Zhao at all. By then, Chen Zhao was already close to the black dragon. Chen Zhao was too fast. If he released a big one now, it would affect the black dragon. Although the black dragon was also a fire elemental like him. The black dragon was a dual elemental of darkness and fire. He wasn't absolutely immune to fire. His own explosion would hurt him. While the fire dragon was hesitating, Chen Zhao's black trident had already pierced into the black dragon's lower jaw. The entire process took less than half a second. The black dragon finally recovered from its weakness. But Chen Zhao was one step ahead. The black trident's huge power pierced through the black dragon's lower jaw. Grow! In the blink of an eye, the black trident was poured into the dark magma, and it expanded exponentially. Ah! Blood spurted out from the black dragon's lower jaw and splashed onto Chen Zhao. The black dragon raised his head with difficulty and turned into a human. He finally broke free from the black trident. Just a little bit slower, just a little bit more. The enlarged black trident had almost exploded his head. However, this was also within Chen Zhao's expectations. Chen Zhao didn't even pause for a second. He swung the black trident in a circle and swept it across the black dragon's body. Both attacks had heavily injured the black dragon. Fortunately, it was the black dragon. If it were someone else, they would have been smashed into pieces. The black dragon crashed onto the ground and Chen Zhao landed beside it. He picked up the dying black dragon. Just then, the undead key appeared again. This was the second time the undead key had worked. Both times, it had worked on the black dragon. The black dragon's body had already collapsed. Even a body as strong as a dragon's could not withstand such a fatal injury. His soul was also being torn apart, but not because of death, but because of the undead key. The undead key was currently disintegrating the black dragon's soul. Chen Zhao was confused. Last time, he'd been stained by the black dragon's blood and received dragon might. But this time, the undead key appeared again. It disintegrated and absorbed the dragon's soul. But Chen Zhao didn't notice any changes. His strength did not increase, and the small world did not change. Suddenly, Chen Zhao felt some new knowledge appear in his mind. This was the black dragon's knowledge. However, this knowledge wasn't very useful to him. He could impart it to Gaia. Gaia had never been able to practice magic, but dragon magic should be no problem for her. Abidos didn't need to. He didn't need to learn from Chen Zhao. His mother was stronger than anyone else, and his bloodline was much purer than Gaia's. Chen Zhao glanced at the dead black dragon. Last time, when the black dragon left behind its severed arm, it still retained its human form. But this time, as soon as the black dragon died, his body reverted to that of a dragon. Chen Zhao looked at the huge black dragon's corpse and put it away. It should taste good. If he extracted the blood, Gaia could also purify it from the black dragon's blood. Chen Zhao turned to the fire dragon and silver dragon. The fire dragon and silver dragon didn't flee because of the black dragon's death. Moraz was shocked by Chen Zhao's dragon-slaying action. Right now, Chen Zhao was covered in blood. He didn't know if it was his or the black dragon's. The atmosphere was suffocating. Finally, Chen Zhao and the two dragons moved. The fire dragon turned into a ball of fire, while the silver dragon turned into solid ice. They charged at Chen Zhao. Instead of retreating, Chen Zhao charged headfirst. He collided with the silver dragon first. As expected, he was sent flying by the silver dragon. Before Chen Zhao could land, a terrifying force attacked him from behind. The fire dragon's attack was red lotus fire. Unlike the previous probing attacks, this explosion could be said to be earth-shattering. Chen Zhao was swallowed by the explosion in an instant. When the smoke dissipated, Chen Zhao stood on the ground. His right arm was covered in blood and burn marks. He was injured. Even with spell return and dark assimilation, he was still injured. Chen Zhao hadn't been injured in battle for more than a year. The fire dragon's attack was too terrifying. It was even scarier than a missile. Moraz covered his mouth and stared at Chen Zhao in shock. Chen Zhao didn't die from such a terrifying impact. But then, Chen Zhao's injuries started recovering rapidly. The burnt skin was falling off and the wound was healing. Chen Zhao had gone through shock explosion training in the river map. Without that training, Chen Zhao would probably be lying on the ground now. After using this super powerful red lotus fire, the fire dragon was much weaker. His recovery speed was clearly slower than the black dragon's. Chen Zhao couldn't let him recover. If he used it a second time, he'd be in danger. Dark lava covered Chen Zhao's wound again. Chen Zhao turned into a stream of light and shot toward the fire dragon. This time he would go all out. His magic power flowed rapidly. Spell return, dark assimilation, and supersonic speed finally made Chen Zhao's magic power surpass his recovery speed. The fire dragon wasn't slow, but it was still half as fast as Chen Zhao. Suddenly, dozens of red lotus fire of various sizes exploded before Chen Zhao. The explosion blocked Chen Zhao's path, but it also blocked the fire dragon's vision. The fire dragon lost sight of Chen Zhao. Suddenly, a figure charged out of the endless flames without any warning. Covered in flames, the figure swung down with a black trident. Bang! The black trident smashed into the fire dragon's neck. With a crack, the fire dragon fell to the ground. But Chen Zhao could feel that the attack didn't break the dragon's neck. Furious, the fire dragon tried to climb up again. Chen Zhao slammed the fire dragon into the ground again with another powerful strike. Just as Chen Zhao was about to hit for the third time, the silver dragon's support arrived. A huge icicle shot toward Chen Zhao. Feeling a chill on his back, Chen Zhao's heart jumped. The moment the icicle shot over, he turned around and swung the black trident down, accurately hitting the top of the icicle. The icicle immediately changed direction and fell down. Poof! The icicle stabbed into the fire dragon's back. The fire dragon completely lost its ability to resist. No one expected the most fatal attack to come from his comrade. Chapter 1478. This time, the fire dragon couldn't get up again. The silver dragon couldn't stay calm now either. He'd wanted to help the fire dragon. Unexpectedly, Chun Zhao schemed against him and gave the fire dragon a fatal blow. Chun Zhao glanced at the fire dragon. The undead key didn't appear this time. It seemed that the fire dragon wasn't his destined enemy. Chun Zhao looked at the silver dragon, and the dragon looked back at him. Even though the number of enemies had decreased from 3 to 1, Chun Zhao still didn't dare to be careless. Chun Zhao wasn't confident in defeating any of the 3 dragons. Moreover, he only had half of his magic power left. The silver dragon seemed to realize that Chun Zhao was weak. It didn't run or dodge. Instead, it attacked Chun Zhao directly. Suddenly, countless icicles appeared around Chun Zhao. They all charged at him, completely surrounding him. Chun Zhao swung his black trident in a circle and shattered countless ice spikes, but more still came. These ice spikes were even more powerful than the most powerful sniper rifle. It instantly pierced through Chun Zhao's body and into his body. Chun Zhao gritted his teeth and pulled out the bloody ice spikes. Just then, the ice spikes attacked again. This time, Chun Zhao wouldn't just stand there like an idiot. The direction of the ice spikes was fixed and couldn't be tracked. Chun Zhao quickly changed his position and charged at the silver dragon around the corner. Clang! Chun Zhao hit the silver dragon with his full strength again. But apart from ice shards flying everywhere, it didn't do any actual damage to the silver dragon. The damage on the silver dragon healed under the effect of the cold air. Chun Zhao had to admit that the silver dragon's terrifying defense made him feel helpless. Chun Zhao's full-strength attack could even sink a warship. But to the silver dragon, it didn't do any damage. Moreover, the recoil made his arms numb. How troublesome! Even a force of 10,000 tons couldn't hurt the silver dragon. The silver dragon's frozen body was the one with the highest defense among all the enemies Chun Zhao had encountered. No other. If there was a fire attack, it should be able to do actual damage to the silver dragon. But most of Chun Zhao's attacks were physical. That was troublesome. Chun Zhao kept attacking in a roundabout way. As long as he stayed in one spot for more than 3 seconds, ice spikes would appear and attack him. Chun Zhao kept hitting the silver dragon. Seeing that it couldn't catch Chun Zhao with its icicles, the silver dragon could only attack him with its limbs, or his frost dragon breath. Chun Zhao had already tried attacking where he thought he was weak. Eyes, mouth, tail, abdomen, back, or wings, even the position of the genitals. Chun Zhao tried to attack anything he could, but the result was disappointing. Right now, Chun Zhao couldn't hurt the silver dragon. The silver dragon couldn't catch him. The 2 sides were in a deadlock. But to Chun Zhao, this wasn't good news. If he couldn't hurt his opponent, then his opponent would have more options to retaliate. Chun Zhao had always used this move against his enemies. He didn't expect that it would be used on him today. It seemed like Chun Zhao had always been the main attacker. But in reality, Chun Zhao was at a disadvantage. Chun Zhao needed to keep attacking. Once his attack stopped, it was time for the silver dragon to retaliate. Was he going to use a killer move? Chun Zhao wasn't willing. Last time, after swallowing Mikados and his army of stillbirth monsters, Chun Zhao's dark lava doubled in size. This also allowed Chun Zhao to learn a new ultimate move. Filling the dark lava into the dark trident was one of them. But this move was an ultimate move, not a killer move. The real killer move needed to use up the dark lava. Every time he used it, he would have one less. For Chun Zhao, the dark lava was very important. He wasn't willing to use it in this battle. But unless Chun Zhao was willing to retreat now, He would have to use a killer move to win. Chen Zhao finally made up his mind. He had to win this battle. Chen Zhao suddenly pushed away, creating a distance of 100 meters. The dark lava gathered in Chen Zhao's hand, turning into a black and red longbow. He pulled the bow into a full moon. An arrow made of dark lava was knocked on the bow. He didn't need to aim. He just needed to capture the silver dragon's aura. 3, 2, 1. The arrow shot through the air, but the moment it left the bow, the arrow suddenly grew bigger, bigger, and bigger. The silver dragon wanted to counterattack, but when it saw the huge arrow flying toward it, it sensed danger. Ice wall. The silver dragon spat out dragon breath, and a huge ice wall appeared before it. But the ice wall couldn't stop the arrow. It instantly pierced a hole. The arrow pierced into the silver dragon's neck in a fraction of a second. At the same time, the cracks on the silver dragon's neck spread out. Roar! The silver dragon roared. Chen Zhao had already charged forward. He swung the black trident and smashed it into the cracked neck. The dragon's roar stopped. The silver dragon's huge head fell to the ground, followed by its huge body. The ice gradually faded, revealing the silver dragon's original body. Level 9 passed. Score D. Chen Zhao exchanged glances with Mor Raz in the distance. Mor Raz couldn't describe her shock right now. In her eyes, this was an epic battle. Compared to this dragon-slaying battle, all the previous battles seemed so insignificant. Whether it was the ambush to kill the black dragon, the borrowed strength to kill the fire dragon, or the desperate battle with the silver dragon, Mor Raz was stunned. Chen Zhao stood where he was and looked at the silver dragon's corpse. This battle had really exhausted him. He'd never been so tired. Fortunately, it was over. Everything was over. Chen Zhao put away the silver dragon's corpse. Let's go. It's time to go out. We can't pass level 10, no matter what. President, can you bring me in next time? Mor Raz's eyes were filled with admiration and anticipation. Sure, I guess. To be honest, this was a battle that made Chen Zhao tired but satisfying. At the same time, it forced Chen Zhao to the extreme and made him realize his weakness. Don't record the progress of level 9, Chen Zhao said. When I'm not here, you should train on level 1. I understand, President. Mor Raz's standards were higher now, but it didn't mean she was stupid. Was she trying to die by recording the progress of level 9? She couldn't use any spells here. She'd be killed instantly. Chen Zhao already planned to bring Pattaya next time. She was a good support and had battle experience. Chapter 1479. When the people in the association saw Chen Zhao come out of the Tower of Trials, they were all curious. They saw Chen Zhao's weak expression. They really wanted to know which level Chen Zhao had taken Mor Raz to. What kind of battle had Chen Zhao gone through to become so weak? It must be known that this was the first time they'd seen Chen Zhao so weak since they knew him. President, you're hurt? West saw the holes in Chen Zhao's clothes. They'd clearly been pierced by some sharp object. There were no wounds inside. With Chen Zhao's self-healing abilities, this wasn't strange. But it didn't mean that he'd completely recovered. Chen Zhao's self-healing abilities could only heal on the surface. In reality, the wounds were still there. West, move everything out of the warehouse. President, do you have something big to put in? Chen Zhao nodded. Big, very big. Then I'll arrange the work, West said. It didn't take long for the warehouse to be cleared. Under everyone's curious and expectant gazes, Chen Zhao piled up the 3 dragon corpses and put them into the warehouse. Whoosh! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Now they knew why Chen Zhao was in such a sorry state. Chen Zhao had slain a dragon. The fire dragon's corpse was the most intact. The black dragon's corpse was a bit broken. The silver dragon's corpse was decapitated. He'd killed 3 dragons at once. This wasn't Gaia's hybrid transformation. Gaia's fire dragon form wasn't even 10 meters long. looking at the 3 dragons in front of him. All of them were more than 100 meters long. It was a completely different concept. Everyone stared at the 3 dragons in astonishment. Harris, do you need them? Chen Zhao turned his head and asked. If you do, I can reserve one for you. Harel shook her head. I can't do it. No one can control a dragon, not even a dead dragon. Death magic is forbidden magic, and turning a dragon into an undead dragon is the taboo of all taboo. Transforming an abyssal demon is already too much for me to consider transforming other undead creatures. Harris knew that she shouldn't bite off more than she could chew. She didn't care about the 3 dragon corpses at all. President, I want 2 dragon eyeballs, one for fire dragon and one for ice dragon, Jalanash said, her eyes shining. Jalanash's eyes lit up. I feel like I can make a divine weapon with these 2 eyeballs. Guild leader, this silver dragon skin can be used to make armor that can withstand high temperatures. What about Ruan Faxi? Leave these matters to him. Also, when Gaia comes back, ask her if she needs dragon blood. Extract all the blood from these 3 dragons and keep it safe. Keep the dragon meat, tendons, bones, and horns well. Everyone was filled with motivation. Norma couldn't help but say, President, I also want a staff made of dragon horn. Guild leader, I want the silver dragon's dragon balls. They can be used to create a magic array that can absorb the surrounding spiritual energy and increase our mana growth rate, Shifeng said. Your request is acceptable. Also, Jalanash, if you want the dragon's eyeball, you can keep it. However, you'll need to pass the 2nd floor of the Tower of Trials first. Otherwise, I doubt you'll be able to keep it if you carry a god artifact around on the streets. All right, since Chen Zhao had spoken, Jalanash could only listen to his request. However, the thought of a magic tool made from the eyeballs of 2 dragons as a weapon filled Jalanash with motivation. Dragon corpses were very precious. There were almost no pure-blooded dragons in the world. Even if there were, humans couldn't kill them. Every part of the dragon race was a rare treasure for humans. West, other than the parts that have been confirmed. For the parts that have not been confirmed, everyone will participate in a group discussion and come up with a distribution plan to ensure that every part of the 3-headed dragon is put to good use. If any of you want something, you can bring it up. If there are any duplicates, then we'll discuss it. If we can't discuss it, then we'll have a public evaluation. Also, I was the one who killed the 3-headed dragon. I wanted to improve the association, not cause internal strife. So I don't want to cause irreconcilable conflicts. Do you understand? With Chen Zhao around, there wouldn't be any conflicts. However, if some parts were really needed by many people and couldn't be reconciled, those who didn't get it would inevitably have a knot in their hearts. So, Chen Zhao hoped that West could discuss with the others and come up with a practical plan. That way, the things would be distributed to the people who needed them. Oh, don't let Ruan Faxi stay idle. After all, we're paying him. Also, after plucking out the eyeballs and skin from the silver dragon's head, give me the complete skull. I want to keep it as a collection. Fei Lai had never seen Chen Zhao so tired. When she saw Chen Zhao return, his clothes were all torn. He also looked dispirited. Fei Lai knew that Chen Zhao must have done something big again. Fei Lai, didn't you say that you wanted to make a collection like the mansion at Mirror Lake? Today I got a nice collection, even though it's only the head. What is it? A dragon's head, Chen Zhao said. Don't tell me you went to slay a dragon today. Yes, a 3-headed dragon. Was it dangerous? No, but it was tiring. It was indeed tiring. The battle had even surpassed Chen Zhao's abilities. But Chen Zhao didn't gain nothing. He felt that he'd become stronger. This was a hearty battle. But after the battle ended and Chen Zhao deactivated all-in-one and dark assimilation, the feeling of exhaustion came. It wasn't enough to make Chen Zhao powerless, but it made him very tired and weak. After returning home, Chen Zhao was even more unwilling to move. Fei Lai went to help him prepare dinner. Qin Zhao picked up his other phone and called the handsome guy. Hey, handsome guy. I killed that old enemy, the compatible enemy. Really? Congratulations. The handsome guy didn't seem surprised. Didn't you say that the compatible enemy would be a great threat to me? As the victor, nothing is a threat, the handsome guy said nonchalantly. How many dragons are there on the 9th level? Above the 9th level, every level is a prison. Those locked up on the 9th level are all descendants of the ancestral dragon. The ancestral dragon is your mount, right? Are you sure it's okay to lock up his descendants in prison? They're all descendants who betrayed the ancestral dragon. They have the blood of the traitor, so you can kill them as long as you kill them all. As long as I kill them all. There are many dragons in there. Chapter 1480. How many dragons are there on the 9th floor? Countless years ago, the ancestral dragon and his son, Herberlin, started a war. Herberlin led his descendants to fight against the ancestral dragon. Can the son beat the father? So, the Herberlin lost and was destroyed by the ancestral dragon. Most of his descendants were exiled too. The ancestral dragon fought all his descendants alone? How many descendants did he have? Back then, the Herberlin was the largest race in hell apart from the 7 demon kings. There were hundreds of millions of them. The ancestral dragon defeated all of them. Actually, he didn't have to defeat all of them. He just had to defeat his son. Herberlin inherited most of the ancestral dragon's power and bloodline, but he was still the ancestral dragon's descendant. The ancestral dragon completely suppressed Herberlin in terms of bloodline. The other descendants were too weak compared to the ancestral dragon and didn't have the right to participate in the war at all. Although a few powerful grandchildren managed to participate, the result couldn't be changed. The ancestral dragon won, and the Herberlin was completely exiled. The Herberlin on the 9th floor of the Tower of Trials was one of them. So, there are no more descendants of the Herberlin in hell now. Nowadays, most of the dragons in hell are the descendants of another child of the ancestral Gragon, the Ural dragon. They are also known as the Ural dragons. There are very few pure-blooded Haber dragons left. But the war between the Haber dragons and the ancestral Gragon has nothing to do with the Ural dragons. The Ural dragons have no grudges or conflicts with the ancestral Gragon and the Haber dragons. Therefore, after the war, the Ural dragons became the protectors of the remaining Haber dragons, protecting them from being banished and allowing them to marry their descendants. Therefore, it doesn't matter if the Haber dragons are the Ural dragons or the Ural dragons. Why did the father and son fight each other? Chen Zhao asked curiously. Perhaps there were many examples of father and son fighting in hell, but there was always a reason. It's simple. Strength, power, and bloodline. As long as the ancestral dragon exists, Herberlin will never be the ruler of the dragons. Ambition beats rationality, but power can't keep up with ambition, Xiao Shuai said calmly. Even though Herberlin is the strongest son of the ancestral dragon, he can't defeat his father. Herberlin's failure is expected. The so-called banishment is to be locked in this training tower? No! Every level above the 9 levels of the trial tower is a small world. The Haber Dragon's world on the 9th level is not small. They have some resources and can move around freely. The real banishment is far crueler than this. They are banished to the abyss, the void, or trapped in the chaos. They are bound and tortured by the distorted power. The 9th level of the trial tower is like heaven to them. They are bound by the rules that I set, and there are no more restrictions on them. In other words, no matter how many people I kill, no one will find trouble with me. As long as you have the ability, you can hunt as you please. Chen Zhao relaxed. Since the handsome guy said it was fine, he didn't have to worry about going overboard. Moreover, he didn't have to worry about exterminating the dragon clan. It seemed like the 9th floor was much bigger than he had imagined. Based on what the handsome young man said, every floor above the 9th floor was a small world and also a prison. I wonder what kind of criminals are locked up on the 10th floor. When can I go up there and take a look? Even if he couldn't win, he would just die once. Of course, The first thing was to improve his strength. At night, Qin Zhao entered the river map again. Old Turtle was meditating like before. Qin Zhao didn't know that he had been meditating here for hundreds of years. Qin Zhao, who did you fight? Can someone beat you up like this in real life? Three-headed dragon, pure-blooded Western dragon. Qin Zhao said, I came in to rest. Oh, Old Turtle, I want to ask you something. What? I want to learn fire spells. Why do you want to learn fire spells? Among the 3 dragons I fought today, one of them is a silver dragon. It can turn its body into indestructible ice. It's harder than the hardest metal I know. I can't even chew through it. If I meet it again, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do anything. So you want to learn fire spells to restrain that silver dragon? Yes. Qin Zhao nodded. Idiot, Old Turtle said directly. Your personality determines your element, Old Turtle said directly. What you need to learn is not fire spells, but to strengthen yourself. You need to defeat your opponent with what you're best at, and use what you're best at to break the ice. But I can't do it. Then train. Train what you're best at until you can do it, Old Turtle said. Nothing is impossible. Are you sure it's possible? Qin Zhao really didn't have much confidence. Why not? Old Turtle said matter-of-factly. Do you think you can beat a tiger in the past? With that, Old Turtle snapped his fingers. Instantly, one of Old Turtle's clones appeared before Qin Zhao. Attack him. Do whatever you want. The Old Turtle was many times more powerful than the 3 black dragons, even though it was only an avatar. Qin Zhao couldn't even move the silver dragon, let alone Old Turtle. Qin Zhao first used 3 days to recover. Then, he started attacking Old Turtle's clone. However, even Qin Zhao's strongest attack was no different from scratching an itch for Old Turtle. You never had any hope from the start. How can an attack like this hurt me? You sound like I can hurt you just because I have hope, Qin Zhao said, rolling his eyes. How do you know you can't? Maybe this clone is just a bit stronger than you? Really? Qin Zhao was instantly energized. Fake. Old Turtle also rolled his eyes. This isn't a hot-blooded comic. Willpower is important, but you can't turn the tables in front of absolute power. You're denying my hard work. Qin Zhao looked at Old Turtle annoyed. So, my advice to you is to not rely on willpower to decide the outcome of a battle. What you need is absolute power. If you rely on winning every victory by the skin of your teeth, then you won't be far from death. What should I do? Don't try to learn what you're not good at. What you're not good at will always be what you're not good at. What you need to do is strengthen what you're best at and then make it stronger. Chapter 1481. Qin Zhao fell into deep thought. Basically, Old Turtle wanted Qin Zhao to increase his attack power. Physical attacks, on the other hand, were speed, power, and the mass of the body when attacking. For example, with Qin Zhao's current power, if he attacked a wall with all his strength, in the end he wouldn't shatter the wall but penetrate it. To increase his own mass, Qin Zhao could do it with 10,000 spells returned to 1 and dark assimilation. After 10,000 spells returned to 1 and fusing with his 6 clones, Qin Zhao would have the weight of 7 people. Of course, increasing his mass by several times was meaningless, but dark assimilation was different. The dark magma had weight. By fusing all the dark magma with himself, Qin Zhao could instantly increase his body or weapon's weight by a few hundred or even a few thousand tons. However, this increase in weight was fixed, unless Qin Zhao increased the amount of the dark magma. But there weren't many chances for him to encounter half-blood dragons like the stillbirth monster and Mikados in that space. Or through cultivation, as his magic power increased, the amount of dark magma would increase as well. However, it would take too long to increase the amount of dark magma through cultivation. Increasing his cultivation to increase his strength was a long-term plan. The increase in strength was purely physical. It could be done through training, but normal training couldn't affect the increase in strength. Qin Zhao wasn't sure how strong he was right now. After all, there were no machines that could measure his current strength. Qin Zhao only had a rough idea. If he didn't use 10,000 spells returned to 1 and dark assimilation, it was estimated to be around 1,400 tons. However, this was only a rough estimate. He didn't know how different it was from the actual data. So, if he wanted to increase his attack power, he could only increase his speed. Chen Zhao had just tried to break through the speed of sound last time, so he didn't have specific data on how fast he was. However, that was movement speed. The speed of his punches also affected his attack power. A normal person's maximum punching speed was around 6 to 7 times, which could last around a minute. If it was within 10 seconds, someone might be able to do it 8 times in 1 second. Chen Zhao's punching speed was much faster than a normal person's. However, there was one thing. The faster the punch, the weaker the power. This was the problem of accumulating power. Muscles had to accumulate power and then use the elasticity of the muscles to fling the arm out, causing damage. Chen Zhao couldn't break this law of physics. Chen Zhao stood up and went before Old Turtle's clone again. Puff! Chen Zhao's fists were as fast as lightning. If Chen Zhao was facing a normal person, they probably wouldn't even be able to see Chen Zhao's fist. Chen Zhao's fist landed on Old Turtle's clone. It's a beautiful punch, but it's too weak. Your muscles accumulate power too slowly, Old Turtle said in scientific terms. Chen Zhao felt the punch. His speed could be even faster, and his strength could be even greater. Chen Zhao tried again. This time, Chen Zhao started throwing out sonic punches continuously. In 30 minutes, Chen Zhao had lost count of how many punches he had thrown. He was unable to accumulate more power. Train your speed first. Your current speed hasn't reached its peak yet. Old Turtle said, you don't have enough speed, and you don't have enough power. You want to train both at the same time? That's clearly impossible. Train your speed to the limit first, and then think about how to release power at the limit. When kinetic energy and potential energy were superimposed, the power would naturally multiply. Just like a bullet, the results of a bullet thrown by hand and a bullet fired by a gun were obviously different. With the same mass, the potential and kinetic energy that a gun could release was far greater than a bullet thrown by hand. Chen Zhao tried his best to speed up his punches. There was a high-frequency, whistling sound in the air. Chen Zhao calculated silently. His maximum speed could reach 80 punches per second. It was about 10 times the maximum speed of a human. Every punch could exceed the speed of sound. However, punching and retracting were different from running in a straight line. His muscles couldn't move continuously. Chen Zhao had to make his muscles remember this feeling. Train continuously. This was probably the limit, right? Chen Zhao looked at Old Turtle. No, far from it. There are too many extra movements in your punches and retractions. You can be faster. If I'm faster, I'll be a fast man. Okay, that's a bit cold. Chen Zhao grinned. I'll be the fastest man in the world. Actually, Chen Zhao was already close to his maximum speed. By continuously fixing the flaws in the details, his speed had increased to 120 punches per second. At this level, he was basically as fast as lightning. Suddenly, Chen Zhao thought of the dragon's method of accumulating power. Was this from Black Dragon's memory? Dragons' body structures were different from humans. However, in terms of physics, they also had to follow the laws of physics. On the other hand, Black Dragon could attack with all his strength in every part of his body. This was related to Black Dragon's unique release of power. It didn't belong to the dragon race, but the Black Dragon. Every member of the dragon clan had their own unique characteristics. Over the course of hundreds and thousands of years, they would constantly study their own bodies and obtain even greater power. Black Dragon was the same. He had a unique attack method. This was also the reason why the Black Dragon's attacks were so unstoppable the first time he fought it. This required the support of Dragon's might. However, he didn't release Dragon's might. Instead, he used it on himself. It was a very special method. He used Dragon's might to stimulate his muscles and make them react. Dragon's might couldn't be used on other dragons, but that was because they also had Dragon's might to block it, so it couldn't be used. However, it was effective on him. As long as he controlled it well, he wouldn't be suppressed. Moreover, Qin Zhao realized that Black Dragon's method wasn't difficult at all. He quickly got the hang of it. It seemed to be because he'd absorbed Black Dragon's soul fragment. Qin Zhao's fists started turning red. It was like metal being rubbed against high-speed air. This method didn't just increase the power of his punches. Even his speed was increased. Suddenly, Qin Zhao's fist smashed into Old Turtle's chest. His fist caved in. Then, Old Turtle spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Qin Zhao stared at Old Turtle in shock. Old Turtle, you did well. I don't have anything else to teach you. The future belongs to you, young people. I can finally rest in peace. Old Turtle's head tilted to the side and he stopped breathing. Qin Zhao turned to look at Old Turtle's real body, speechless. Just then, another clone pounced over, face full of grief. What's wrong, junior brother? Wake up! Chapter 1482. Qin Zhao watched as Old Turtle's two clones finished their two-man show. Of course, most of his attention was still focused on cultivation. Qin Zhao realized that his muscles were aching. Qin Zhao was confused. Why was it aching so quickly? He had to know that if he used all returns to one and dark assimilation at the same time, he wouldn't feel tired even if he fought at full power for 3 hours. But now he felt tired after only half an hour. It seemed that using Black Dragon's method to stimulate the muscles would increase their fatigue. In other words, this was a fighting method that exceeded the limit. In a short time, one's combat ability would increase in all aspects. Strength and speed would increase by leaps and bounds, but it would also increase the burden on the muscles. After Old Turtle finished his act, he was finally serious. You seemed a bit special just now. You didn't look normal. I found a method to stimulate the muscles that can increase my explosive power in a short time, but it can only last half an hour at most. This is not part of your training plan. Although this kind of technique can indeed boost your fighting power in a short period of time, it will also harm your body. Every human sect has similar techniques, but most of them will be left with a lot of injuries in their later years after using them. It's all because their bodies have been overloaded. When you use this method, it means that you have to use it, Qin Zhao said. The decision isn't in your hands anymore. Qin Zhao nodded. Qin Zhao analyzed it from a medical point of view. Dragon's might stimulated the muscles to contract, giving him explosive power in a short time. Muscle contraction brought about high explosive power, but at the same time, it also increased the accumulation of lactic acid. However, the release of lactic acid was mostly because the muscles weren't used to this kind of high-intensity exercise. If he could get used to this kind of high-intensity exercise, he might be able to use this kind of explosive power. Of course, there was another possibility, which was muscle fiber damage. This possibility was relatively small. Qin Zhao was quite confident in his body. Muscle fiber was the toughest tissue in the human body. It covered the entire body. This was used to protect the human body. Even fat people had muscle fibers, but they were covered under the fat and skin layer. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. The golden key could continuously make him evolve. However, in the past, it was all due to the changes in the external environment that led to evolution and adaptation. In that case, could he use this kind of training to activate the evolution of the golden key, allowing himself to adapt to the explosive power? Seeing the change in Qin Zhao's eyes, Old Turtle asked, "Have you thought of a way?" "Try again," Qin Zhao said. With that, he used the stimulation method again. "You don't seem to be listening to me," Old Turtle said meaningfully. I have my own ideas, Qin Zhao replied. In an instant, Qin Zhao threw out hundreds of punches, using the muscle stimulation method. Qin Zhao could clearly feel the rhythm and changes of each muscle. Muscles were not lumps. If you looked through a microscope, you could see that the muscles were made up of thin lines of fibers. Qin Zhao's senses were not only external, but also internal. This was called inner vision. This method was not only used by Taoists, but also did not belong to any single faction or religion. As long as one reached a certain level of cultivation, they would be able to do it. Qin Zhao could even sense every fiber and even control and stimulate them. If Qin Zhao needed it, he could supercharge his muscles and make them expand, thus becoming Mr. Bodybuilder. However, that was foolish. Large muscles did not bring about greater combat power. Qin Zhao even admired those kinds of bodybuilders. They had no sense of beauty at all. Qin Zhao did not know what was the point of people who relied on steroids and hormones to maintain their muscles for a long time. The end result of those bodybuilders was that their lifespan was half of a normal person's. They might suffer from all kinds of diseases in their 30s or 40s. Their morbidity rate was also several times higher than normal people. They looked extremely strong, but their immune systems and bodily functions had collapsed long ago. For example, Gaia. She had been training her muscles to contract. Because her muscles were too big, it affected her combat power. Of course, it was because she was already tall and had been training intensely for a long time. So, as long as she controlled her diet and trained at the same time, she could easily lose weight. Qin Zhao also realized this. The key to increasing his combat power was in his muscles. This was a problem that Qin Zhao had neglected in the past. In the past, Qin Zhao had been improving his body and magic. As long as he succeeded, this method of improvement was obvious, but he did not dig into his potential. Qin Zhao kept adjusting his muscle structure, arranging and distributing them in the most optimal way. He also released a sliver of dragon's might. Suddenly, Old Turtle raised an eyebrow and looked at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao could feel the changes in his body. In an instant, hundreds of fist shadows appeared in front of Old Turtle's avatar. Boom, 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 it had changed. Everything had changed. From a distance of more than 2 meters, Qin Zhao actually sent out hundreds of huge fist shadows. The fist shadows landed on Old Turtle's avatar, but did not cause any damage. But Qin Zhao could feel the qualitative change in his attack power. The entire process was under Qin Zhao's control. Qin Zhao had adjusted and optimized it bit by bit. Then he combined it with muscle stimulation to achieve this result. In the past, no matter how much power Qin Zhao used, he could not do this. There wasn't any magic involved in this. He used pure strength and speed, and a sliver of dragon's might to attack from a distance. Yes, this was the feeling. Qin Zhao did not stop. He kept releasing fist shadows. The most effective attack distance is around 5 meters. Beyond 5 meters, the power of your punches will decrease. Below 5 meters, the power of your punches won't be able to reach its peak. Old Turtle's avatar said as he retreated to around 5 meters. Let's have a real battle. How about it? Old Turtle asked. Qin Zhao was stunned. Real battle? Real battle with Old Turtle? This was something Qin Zhao had never thought of. Even if it was just an avatar. It was meaningless, right? If he wanted to fight, he would fight someone of the same level or slightly higher. What was the point of fighting Old Turtle? Wait, careful, I'm coming. Qin Zhao saw Old Turtle punch. It was the same fist shadows as his. Qin Zhao did not dare to be careless. He threw out hundreds of fist shadows in an instant. Boom! Qin Zhao lost consciousness. Chapter 1483. Qin Zhao woke up 3 days later. Qin Zhao still remembered the punch clearly. The first thing Old Turtle said after Qin Zhao woke up was, "Did you see my punch clearly?" But Qin Zhao still felt that Old Turtle had only fought him to hit him. Only a ghost could see that punch clearly. Apart from being stronger than him, what else could it be? Chen Zhao was silent for a while. The scene before he fainted flashed through his mind. After a while, Chen Zhao looked at Old Turtle. "I'm sure you only did it to hit me." "No, you didn't realize the secret." "What secret?" "You have to realize it yourself." "I still think you did it to hit me." "Actually, part of the reason is to train your resistance," Old Turtle said. Old Turtle said, "Normal missiles can't hurt you anymore. It's time for me to take the field." That was what he said, but he'd heavily injured himself the first time. Then he'd fainted for 3 days. Wasn't that too much? Chen Zhao might be very strong in a normal world, but against Old Turtle, Chen Zhao wouldn't even be able to block 1,000th or 10,000th of Old Turtle's power. This was a difference in quality. How long had Chen Zhao been cultivating? Less than 2 years, but Old Turtle had been cultivating for thousands of years. Moreover, after reaching a certain level, one's level would increase slower and slower, but their power would increase faster and faster. For example, Chen Zhao and Gaia. In the past, Gaia could beat Chen Zhao up. Now, Chen Zhao could completely beat Gaia, because Chen Zhao was getting stronger and stronger, and he was improving faster and faster. Now, Old Turtle might not do anything for 1 day, and his power would increase more than Chen Zhao's 10 years of cultivation. It was like a rich man who had $10 billion in the bank. Even if he did nothing, 1 day's interest was more than a normal person's lifetime's worth of hard work. Before Old Turtle, Chen Zhao was that poor man. Old Turtle was very passionate about beating people up. In the past, he'd never trained Chen Zhao like this. That was because Chen Zhao had been too weak in his eyes. But now he felt that the time was right. Chen Zhao was already strong enough. He could take 1 punch. Return to 1. Couldn't take 1 punch. Dark assimilation. Couldn't take 1 punch. 2 added together. He still couldn't block a single punch. Chen Zhao did everything he could, but he still couldn't escape the fate of being knocked out. Chen Zhao tried to stop the punch with the shadow of his fist, but the result was the same. As the old saying goes, in the face of absolute power, all struggles seem so futile and laughable. Before the Old Turtle, Chen Zhao's power was indeed a joke. 3 days, 3 days, 3 days in a coma. Every time Chen Zhao recovered, he would receive 1 punch from Old Turtle. He wondered if Old Turtle had gone easy on him. After fainting a dozen times, Old Turtle told him that he had only been unconscious for a little more than 2 days this time. Chen Zhao suspected that Old Turtle had gone easy on him, not that he had improved. Old Turtle was only afraid that he wouldn't want to play anymore, so he went easy on him. But after 20 times, he realized that he'd actually blocked Old Turtle's first punch. Although he was heavily injured, he did not lose consciousness. "Old Turtle, what level do I need to reach?" "Train until you can block at least 3 of my punches, and you're still standing." It wasn't easy. Only when he faced the Old Turtle's fist could he feel the pressure of a landslide. "Are you an idiot? What kind of trash spell did you use this time? You gave up what you're best at and tried to use magic to stop me." Chen Zhao had just used the spell he'd found in the Black Dragon's soul fragment, Shadow Fortress. But just as Old Turtle had scolded, this was indeed a stupid choice. Fine, this was just Chen Zhao's first attempt. After trying, Chen Zhao confirmed that he was indeed not suitable for this kind of external spell. He also knew a few spells, but they were all support-type spells. He barely had any offensive spells. Old Turtle always said that he didn't have talent in this area. But Chen Zhao still tried to prove that Old Turtle was right. Pure physical attacks were indeed more suitable for him. Old Turtle's test for Chen Zhao was more like a one-sided beating than training. This training took longer than Chen Zhao's previous training with 1,000 swords. He hadn't even finished it when he left the river map. He had to come back the next night to receive Old Turtle's cruel training, although the process of being beaten was very painful. But Chen Zhao really felt that he had become stronger. Maybe to the outside world it was only 2 nights, But it wasn't the same for Qin Zhao. It was 3 years. Of course, even so, Qin Zhao still couldn't block 3 punches. One punch could even heavily injure him. He could only block the second punch with his body. The third punch would definitely make him lose consciousness. This kind of training was too long and painful. No, you have to maintain your defense after the first punch. If all your defenses are destroyed by the first punch, you definitely won't be able to block the second and third punches. That was true, but how could he block the first punch without all his defenses collapsing? This was a huge problem. This training method couldn't activate the Golden Key's power of evolution. Qin Zhao couldn't rely on evolution to obtain everything. If he wanted to block Old Turtle's first punch, he had to block the first punch first. Also, he had to be on full defense. He couldn't be destroyed. If he couldn't block the first punch, all his defenses would collapse. Then, he would have to face Old Turtle's second punch. With his body, taking Old Turtle's second punch directly would cause his body to collapse. The third punch would be a fatal one. Here came the first punch. Old Turtle's punches weren't fast. It wasn't that he couldn't move fast. He just wanted to give Qin Zhao time to react. Of course, Qin Zhao could dodge, but then the training would be meaningless. Qin Zhao's brain started working quickly. Suddenly, Qin Zhao thought of a possibility. The dark lava didn't stick to Qin Zhao this time. He didn't go through dark assimilation. Instead, the dark lava formed a wall, an extremely sturdy wall. It wasn't like a wall made of mud. It was more like a wall made of bricks. Qin Zhao pressed his palms against the wall. The dark lava became extremely sturdy. Qin Zhao had never used it like this before. Even though he'd used it for defense before, he'd never used it to create such an indestructible wall. Bang! Old Turtle's first punch landed on the wall. The dark lava split into pieces. Qin Zhao flew out. Old Turtle looked at Qin Zhao on the ground. Not bad. You've developed a new fighting style, but it's not in our training list. Chapter 1484. Old Turtle wanted Qin Zhao to train his own defense, not other defensive techniques. So this time, Old Turtle knocked Qin Zhao down with one punch. This time, Qin Zhao was unconscious for more than 10 days. He had to continue training. Qin Zhao still couldn't block Old Turtle's 3 punches. Qin Zhao's body was also changing. At first, the feeling was very vague, but as he was beaten more and more, the feeling grew stronger. It seemed like the Golden Key's ability was working again, but it didn't seem like it. Qin Zhao didn't know if this change came from the Golden Key's evolution. Hey, your resistance seems to be increasing. You seem different. Old Turtle noticed it too, but Qin Zhao still couldn't find what the change was. His body structure was still the same. His organs were still the same. He was no different from a normal person. Qin Zhao clearly felt the change, but he couldn't find what it was. Qin Zhao suddenly thought of a possibility. If his body structure and strangeness didn't change, then he definitely couldn't see what had changed. What couldn't he see in his body? Now that Qin Zhao could look inside, he could see almost all the mysteries of his body. Of course, it wasn't absolute. There were still some things that Qin Zhao couldn't see. Those were the cells. Qin Zhao could look inside, but he couldn't see at a glance. In other words, it was most likely that his cells had changed. This made Qin Zhao suspect if the evolution was due to the Golden Key's influence. Because every time the Golden Key caused Qin Zhao to evolve, he had a very clear feeling. But this time it was very vague. It went from a very small feeling to a more intense change in his body. If it wasn't due to the Golden Key's ability, what else could it be? The Undead Key? The Undead Key's ability wasn't evolution. Instead, it could absorb enemy soul fragments. More accurately, it could absorb enemy soul fragments of a similar nature. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. No, the Undead Key's ability wasn't to absorb soul fragments. It was to make up for it. Like two pieces of a puzzle, the undead key could absorb enemy soul fragments of a similar nature to make up for its own flaws or inadequacies. Maybe the black dragon's soul fragment had changed him somehow? Was it just an increase in resistance? In reality, Qin Zhao was unconscious right now. Chun Zhao was knocked out by Old Turtle again. But now he could stay conscious. Qin Zhao only discovered this when he fainted. Perhaps it was subconscious now. However, Qin Zhao could clearly sense the concept of me. If it was just a dream, there would be no concept of I. Qin Zhao didn't understand what was going on either. Perhaps this was the awakening of the self. Qin Zhao could still sense the unconscious little world. Qin Zhao had an idea. What if he consciously used magic to speed up the healing process? Qin Zhao had fainted because Old Turtle had punched him in the chest. All the ribs in his chest were broken. At the same time, the huge impact also caused his brain to temporarily freeze. It worked. Qin Zhao could feel his body recovering faster. Old Turtle glanced at the unconscious Qin Zhao on the ground. He seemed to have figured something out. Has your sea of consciousness awakened? You've improved more than I thought. Qin Zhao didn't hear Old Turtle's mutterings. However, he discovered a problem. The source of magic power in his body disappeared. That's right, it disappeared. But his magic power was still there. The magic power he used to heal his injuries just now came from every corner of his body. Every spiritualist had a source of magic power. Qin Zhao was no exception. But now, Qin Zhao realized that his source of magic power had disappeared. He panicked and didn't know what to do. Suddenly, Qin Zhao realized that the disappearance of his magic power had something to do with the changes in his body. According to his guess, the changes came from his cells. Then, could the disappearance of his magic power be due to the changes in his cells? To confirm his guess, Qin Zhao tried again. As expected, every time he used magic power, it would surge from every part of his body and every corner. But after a closer inspection, he couldn't find any source of magic power. Had his cells become a magic power storage source? The little world was sending magic power into his body and then charging every cell. Qin Zhao suddenly opened his eyes. Seeing that Qin Zhao had woken up, Old Turtle was a bit surprised. So fast this time. How long was I out? 13 hours. My body seems to have changed. Qin Zhao looked at his hands. I can tell. It's similar to how Western dragons accumulate magic. You're saying that I'm accumulating magic like dragons do? Yes. Every cell is filled with magic power. Don't dragons have magic power too? Don't they have Dragon Balls? Dragon Balls aren't their magic power source. They're their lives. Is my change obvious? No, it's not. You're like the Taoists' return to simplicity. If I wasn't so much stronger than you, I probably wouldn't be able to see the change. Looking at his arms, Qin Zhao felt that he was filled with power. Will I become a dragon? You're changing your way of accumulating magic power, not your genes becoming a dragon. I know the reason, but I don't know what the trigger is. Is it because of your beating? It's partly because of the beating, but I think this should be a normal evolutionary trend. It's like the survival of the fittest in nature. The better way of accumulating magic power will eliminate the outdated way. From a certain perspective, this is also evolution. But I don't feel that my magic power has increased. Evolution isn't just about growth. It's more practical and effective use, Old Turtle said. Old Turtle said, a cell's lifespan can range from a few days to a few months. A cell full of magic will greatly increase the lifespan of the cell. The rate of cell renewal will decrease, which means your lifespan will greatly increase. Just from this alone, you've already benefited. You've obtained a way to extend your lifespan in the most fundamental way, and there are no side effects. Old Turtle said. Old Turtle paused and then said, also, filling your cells with magic power will increase your physical attributes by leaps and bounds. Do you want to try? Chen Zhao hesitated and looked at Old Turtle. It's easy. Don't worry. I'll be really gentle. You won't feel pain. Old Turtle tapped, lightly. Instantly, Chen Zhao lost control of his body and his head sank. Before he fainted, Chen Zhao only had one thought: curse. Chapter 1485. Chen Zhao fell down again. However, he felt that he didn't faint for long this time. Chen Zhao opened his eyes abruptly. Old Turtle, you're cheating. This isn't training, Chen Zhao complained. If he'd really wanted to kill Chen Zhao with that attack, he would have died long ago. However, Old Turtle's attack had clearly exceeded the standard. Human or other species, they all need stimulation to activate their potential. Your cells are full of energy right now and are extremely active. If you want to progress in the next stage, you need to stimulate your cells. With that, Old Turtle kicked Chen Zhao's butt. You can leave now. Chen Zhao was kicked out of the river map, but the air outside felt completely different from the inside. In the river map, Old Turtle was too powerful. The spiritual qi that Chen Zhao absorbed was actually emitted from Old Turtle. Chen Zhao was like a big boss, while Chen Zhao was a small employee. But it was different in the outside world. The spiritual qi didn't belong to anyone. It was like natural resources. Every cell in Chen Zhao's body was greedily devouring the spiritual qi in the air. The small world was also operating at the fastest speed, turning the spiritual qi into magic and sending it to Chen Zhao's body and cells. Chen, it's the middle of the night. Are you trying to scare me by standing there? Fei Lai opened her eyes at some point and looked at Chen Zhao, who was standing in front of the balcony. As soon as Chen Zhao turned around, he felt his body lighten and float up. It felt out of control. Chen Zhao crawled in the air on all fours. It looked like he was dog paddling. Chen, it's so late. Are you acting funny? Fei Lai, nothing. I'm cultivating. You're practicing dog paddling swimming. Actually, dog paddling swimming is a special cultivation method, Chen Zhao said, chuckling. At the same time, he waved his hands in the air, making himself float. I'm ignoring you. I'm going to sleep. Fei Lai pulled up the blanket. Chen Zhao was quite depressed too. It was fine when he had the source of magic. Now that he didn't have the source, the magic spread throughout his body. It became difficult to control his body's gravity. He couldn't absorb anymore. He couldn't oversaturate his cells. If he did, he wouldn't even be able to touch the ground. After thinking for a while, he decided to use half of the magic power in his body. Chen Zhao's mana had been around 80%. After using half of it, there was only 40% left. When Chen Zhao landed on the ground, he didn't feel like he was floating. Chen Zhao tried a few more times. If his magic power exceeded 60%, he would fly. However, as long as his mana did not increase, he could stabilize himself on the ground. If there was a battle and he needed to go all out, it would take about 15 minutes for his magic power to recover to 100%. Seems like I also need to practice flying and landing. It wasn't very comfortable to keep his body at 40% magic power. Humans instinctively want their bodies to be in peak condition. It was like a person who ate 40% full. He would definitely not like it. However, Chen Zhao's current state also confirmed his previous guess. When magic power reached a certain level and the mass of the body was lower than that of air, the human body would be able to break free from gravity. Because Chen Zhao's magic had become so powerful, he could now break free from gravity. Unlike before, when he used the small world to fly, he now truly had the ability to fly. He was no longer restricted by the small world and couldn't go higher than 100 meters. However, Chen Zhao tried many times in one night, but he couldn't control it. He probably hadn't mastered the tricks of flying and landing. Chen Zhao flew 10,000 meters in the air at his highest point. He wasn't afraid of being discovered by the radar. The radar could only detect metal or heat now. It couldn't detect if a person was flying in the sky, unless the person was large enough. The feeling of flying in the sky was very magical. It was a feeling that he had never felt before. Chen Zhao had skydived before. However, that feeling was completely different from the feeling when he flew up. But he didn't stay for long. Then he reduced his magic power and landed. Northern Europe. Hungary. This was the origin of witches. In the Middle Ages, this was also the place where witches were hunted and persecuted the most. Of course, in modern times, witches started to unite again. And the most famous witch in Hungary should be Bloody Mary. There were many legends about Bloody Mary. Some said she was a vampire, while others said she was a witch. Actually, many spiritualists knew Bloody Mary's background. She came from the Scarlet Church, a mysterious and powerful religious organization. Every leader of the Scarlet Church was called Bloody Mary. The legendary 12th generation Bloody Mary wasn't famous because of her power. It was because of her noble identity and cruel methods. The Scarlet Church's origin came from Lilith, the witch. The first Bloody Mary was Lilith's servant, so every leader after that was called Bloody Mary. The Scarlet Church worshipped blood and believed that magic came from it. But they weren't a cult, and they didn't pursue cruel and evil magic. The legendary Bloody Mary didn't represent the Scarlet Church. In the Nordic spiritual world, every generation of Bloody Mary had a very high status. If there was any big trouble in the spiritual world, the Scarlet Church would help too. Especially in modern times, the Scarlet Church had been using kindness and justice to wash away the stain caused by the 12th generation Bloody Mary. Actually, they were a group of smart women. They knew that they couldn't survive in this era through violence and evil. Ploton Castle was the headquarters of the Scarlet Church. Now, the 23rd generation Bloody Mary was in power. In fact, other than the 23rd generation, there were also the 24th and 25th generation Bloody Mary. Although the last two generations inherited the title of Bloody Mary, because the previous generation hadn't died yet, the 24th and 25th generation Bloody Mary had no power. Today, there were more than 30 guests in the Ploton Castle. They were all invited by the 23rd generation Bloody Mary. They came from all over the world, including many famous people in the spiritual world. The 23rd generation Bloody Mary walked out of the castle slowly to welcome the invited guests. Thank you for coming, everyone. Your presence brings light to the Scarlet Church. The 23rd generation Bloody Mary nodded slightly to express her etiquette. She was too old. After witnessing World War I and World War II, she was about to rot. I believe everyone already knows why I invited you here, right? 767E, 5EA6, 641C, 7D22, 3010, for E91, 6765, 9601, 3011, 5C0F, 8BF4, 7F51, 7AD9, FF0C, 8BA9, for F60, for F53, 9A8C, 66F4, 65B0, 6700, 65B0, 6700, 5 February, 7684, 7AE0, 8282, 5C0F, 8BF4, FROC, 6240, 6709, 5C0F, 8BF4, 79D2, 66F4, 65B0, 3002. Chapter 1486. These 30 or so guests were all spiritualists from various countries, regardless of their status and reputation in their country or internationally. Facing the 23rd generation Blood Mary, who could almost be called a living fossil, they had to show enough respect. And they were all invited by Blood Mary of the 23rd generation. Many of them had dealings with the 23rd Blood Mary or the Scarlet Church. I'm about to decay. The 23rd generation Blood Mary threw out a bomb as soon as she opened her mouth. Everyone's jaws dropped as they looked at the 23rd generation Blood Mary in shock. However, he also felt that it was only natural. After all, he could be said to be the oldest person in the world, and he was already 140 years old. She has lived through 3 centuries, from the end of the 19th to the 20th, and now the 21st. She had seen so much war and destruction. At the same time, she was the most powerful woman in the world. According to the tradition of the Scarlet Church, I will pass my power to the next generation, the 24th Blood Mary. However, my power is too great. Even if the 24th and 25th generations accept my power, they can only receive 1% of my power. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, not to mention the fact that she was an underage 25th generation Blood Mary. The 24th Blood Mary had already made a name for herself in the spiritual world. She was known as the best successor of the 23rd generation, and it was not an exaggeration to say that she was the most powerful witch of the younger generation. 24th generation Blood Mary could already be compared to some 70 or 80-year-old fellows. But even such an outstanding 24th generation Blood Mary could only receive 1% of the power of the 23rd generation Blood Mary. Based on their understanding of the Scarlet Church, the more powerful the inheritance was, the more mana it could receive. Not a bit more, not a bit less. But such a powerful and outstanding 24th generation was only 1% of the 23rd generation. Just how powerful was the 23rd Blood Mary? I don't know if my soul will return to Lilith's embrace or fall into hell after I die. After I die, my remaining power will dissipate, but I hope to leave something in this world as a mark of my existence. The 23rd generation Blood Mary said, "That's why I asked you to come here. Please help me convey my will. Madam Blood Mary, please instruct me. I will divide my remaining power into 98 portions." 23rd generation Blood Mary said, 8 from China, 8 from Europe, 3 from Japan, 1 from North America. Excuse me, Madam Blood Mary, do you have any basis for this distribution method? Or is it just your personal preference? The person who asked the question was a guest from North America. He was unhappy that the North American region had only been awarded one. I made my assessment based on the strength of each country or region in the supernatural world. China is a superpower in the supernatural world and is the country and region with the strongest supernatural powers in the world. I believe that no one has any objections. Europe is my hometown and is also the second largest supernatural region in the world, so it is equal to China. The other regions are relatively weaker, so there is no benefit in dividing too much. I think the supernatural forces in these 2 areas are already strong enough. They don't need to share so much. The representative from North America said, "On the contrary, I think Madam Blood Mary should consider supporting the relatively weaker regions and countries, such as North America. Each of these 98 portions of power represents a responsibility. They are not given for free. For example, I will make 3 requests for Japan. The first request is to reseal the killing stone that is about to be unsealed. The second request is to solve the riddle of Calamity Village. The third request is to kill the 100 ghost kings that are dormant in the Nagao Shrine. Whoever can fulfill one of these 3 requests will get a portion of power. I don't restrict the spiritualists from other countries or regions from completing the task. If your country or region doesn't get a portion of power, you can go to another country or region. If you can complete the request before the spiritualists in your country, you can come to me and get a portion of power." Blood Mary looked at the representative from North America and said, "The mission from North America is to find and destroy the ghost ship Turin. Is there a mission of the same difficulty in North America? If there is, I don't mind giving 1 more to North America." The representative from North America broke out in a cold sweat. Find and destroy the ghost ship Turin. Turin was the legendary ghost ship that had dominated the Pacific Ocean for more than 300 years. Originally, Turin was a trading ship that escorted black slaves. However, during the last escort of the Turin, they sent the wrong passenger to the Turin. The greatest wizard of that era on the African continent launched a terrible attack midway and sank into the depths of the Pacific Ocean with Turin. When Turin reappeared, it became a synonym for disaster. The route that Turin used to take had become the route of death. That route used to be the most prosperous trade route. However, when Turin reappeared, no ship dared to take that route anymore. The ships that dared to take that route never reached their destination, even in modern times. The government and the supernatural organizations had tried to settle accounts with Turin and destroy this terrible ghost ship. However, Turin still wandered on that route of death, and the team that went to destroy it never returned to shore. The representative from North America thought that Blood Mary must be biased against the supernatural world in North America. She was deliberately making things difficult for them. It was impossible to destroy the Turin. Of course, people from other regions didn't think so. For example, the representative from Japan said, "Ms. Blood Mary, you're too generous to the supernatural world in North America. Our mission is so difficult, but why is the mission in North America so easy? Although the supernatural world in North America is indeed weak, it's not to the extent of asking us to complete a legendary mission. You're only asking the supernatural world in North America to complete this kind of cleansing mission. If you think that the mission in any region is easy, you can go there. Although I assign the mission to each country, I don't restrict people of different nationalities to complete the mission." Blood Mary said, "Okay, I've finished. Come down and let Blood Mary tell you the details. I'm tired, so I won't disturb you young people anymore." 9 Heavens, Godly Emperor mobile version.